Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 2 of the Cross-Pollination Podcast. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing you to Mr. Gabriele Sforza, or Gaby for short. He's a man of many hats. He's a singer, songwriter, and I will have put all the relevant links in description. I really recommend you check out his music, but I'm sure that I will not need to convince you too much after you hear his beautiful chiseled English and his Steway voice. So there you go. But Gaby also does other things that we go into. He's also a composer, and we go into movie music and composing for video games. He's an aesthete and a student of art history. And we talk about that and about how visual art, fine arts like sculpture inspire him to compose, and different strategies that he developed for writing songs and dealing with the inner critic. We also talk about his upbringing and the fact that he's also a TCK, a third culture kid, because he grew up in several countries, including Switzerland and Italy, and he's half Italian and half Japanese. Towards the end of the podcast, we talk about meditation, different kinds of meditation he has practiced, and then we start to go into the more political and societal implications of mindfulness and the conclusions one can draw from it. If you want to have a more detailed summary, and if you want to jump from part to part, you have timestamps in description. And as before, that is the sound of a footnote that you can find at the end of the podcast, and they are also linked in the description, and I use them to either correct something that was wrong or to go into more details about a specific subject. So yeah, without further ado, I bring you Mr. Gaby Sforza. Okay, hi there. Hello, Mr. Sforza.
Hello.
The reason you're here is because Mr. Chris Walker that I got on last time really told me that I should get you on. So I contacted you, and here you are. Also, I must say I really love your music, and we've had some interesting conversations in the past. So I just wanted to hit the ground running and ask you if I told you, hello, Mr. Pocket, does that ring any bell?
No.
No, it doesn't. You know the brothers Coen?
Yeah.
The two directors. I wonder if you've seen the Ballad of Buster Scruggs.
No, I haven't seen that.
Yeah, I really recommend it, because I was told by Eliot, actually. I was asking him about different things we could talk about in the podcast, and he told me that you are a Tom Waits aficionado.
Oh yeah. I guess I feel bad saying that because I don't know all his music, but there is a lot of his stuff that I'm a huge fan of.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I don't know much about him as well. I mean, I've heard many of the hagiographies, of the people like saying that he's a god of rock and roll. And so, I mean, not exactly rock and roll. He has he's really been a pioneer. But the reason I'm mentioning that movie is because this movie is a masterpiece, first of all. Like, these two guys are so amazing. And it's made of short stories.
Okay.
And a lot of them are... I mean, I enjoyed a lot of them, and I would really recommend you watch it. But there is one of them with Tom Waits, actually. And I did not know it was him. And he's impersonating 1849er, like a 49er, a guy that was in the gold rush, and he's just looking for Mr. Pocket, which is like his name for the pocket, pocket of gold.
Okay.
And it's really amazing. But yeah, he's singing in a really beautiful way at the beginning of the clip, and I never noticed it was Tom Waits until I started geeking on the Wikipedia page, and I saw that they had all these references and stuff.
Yeah. I don't know that movie, but yeah, Tom Waits is interesting because I actually, the first time I heard of Tom Waits, it was his albums where he's singing with that gravelly Tom Waits voice. But then I discovered, have you ever heard his first two albums?
I heard of Closing Time.
Yeah, exactly. That was his first.
Yeah.
And that was one that I really fell in love with.
Yeah. The 1973 one.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I just looked it up before.
Oh, okay, there you go.
Yeah, I didn't know it.
Homework.
I mean, to be honest, I heard of Tom Waits. and I heard, I mean, there's a description that I read, I have to find it, but it was a description of his voice.
Mm-hmm.
And some music journalists, you know, they have this tendency, I mean, usually it's a bit over the top.
Right.
But like they try to describe sound with like, to describe it. And this description was really interesting. So yeah, I'll link it.
Yeah, cool.
But yeah, so I got a chance to listen to his to this album, and it's true. It's not really what I expected. I expected something much more voice centric.
Yeah. And I felt like maybe I think in that album too, but what I started noticing is like I discovered that he was actually really into he loves musicals. And there's kind of an element of that you can hear in some of his songs there, I think. Like Grapefruit Moon, you know that song?
No, I don't.
Well, it's on Closing Time, but
Okay.
and I don't know how to describe exactly what gives it that musical feel, but it's a bit theatrical, just a little different from classic singer-songwriter type style,
Yeah.
I guess.
That makes sense. Because I feel like even though I'm poorly acquainted with your music, I feel like there is such an approach. I mean, the way you see music, in the sense that I mean, of course you cannot, you know, make it easily fit into two categories and draw a perfect line like this, but there seems to be music that is made for its own sake, so like a symphony, and music that is used as a tool to serve a story, so that would be an opera, for example. And for example, if you listen to, I don't know, Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, there is no real story there. I mean, of course you feel emotions, but it's not a written story.
Yeah.
You might feel like power or anger or an army marching, but and that's also the beautiful thing, is that you're allowed to have your interpretation. Where in Mozart's Zauberflöte, the magic flute, it's pretty clear what the story is about. You know, you have characters, you have a storyline, you have etc. And I feel listening to your music that, and also listening to the film music things that you've done, that there is maybe this need, and tell me if I'm wrong, but to tell the story of something and not just do music, like to give it a bit more sense. Would you agree to that, or?
I guess so. I don't think I think strictly in terms of narrative, but it's definitely, well, I need something to write about, for sure.
Yeah, for example, the song, I mean, maybe it's, I cannot say it's my favorite, but I really like your songs, but this one really struck a chord with me. Maybe because I had the chance to hear it live, but Chameleons.
Okay, yeah.
First of all, the guitar playing on, I mean, I saw you at a singer-songwriter gig the last time.
Yeah.
And at Bar Bobu here in Berlin. And first of all, the first thing that struck me is the guitar work. Because it's true that a lot of singer-songwriters tend to use the guitar strictly as an accompanying instrument.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not, I mean, they don't give it as much importance as you seem to in your music, and especially in that song, who is super funky.
Right. Well, thanks.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I've heard it a couple of times. I really love it.
Yeah, well, I guess, yeah, when I started songwriting and I picked up the guitar, I was just a beginner songwriter, and it was pretty much just an instrument for accompaniment. But I guess I write most of my stuff by myself, and I play by myself. And at a certain point, I always find myself like really dissatisfied if I'm writing with sort of a dependence on having production behind it.
Yeah.
I kind of want it to be able to stand on its own.
Yeah.
So I think that's when I get pretty considerate of the guitar playing.
Oh, that's really interesting.
I guess. Yeah, because I've always been playing alone. Even when I was trying to learn like some solos, I wanted to learn Purple Haze. The intro, you know?
Yeah.
But all I had was my acoustic guitar. I didn't have an electric for ages. And I was just so bored just playing that riff with my fingers. Like it didn't have that same impact.
Yeah.
So I started playing more percussively. and giving it a bit more like edge, you know, so I could actually do it on my own and be satisfied with it. You know?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So,
man, that pick scrap or scrape that you do,
right?
I mean, that's the thing that I see commonly in metal music.
Okay.
Yeah, that happens a lot. I wonder where you got that. I never saw a singer-songwriter do that. So like scrape the strings this way and bam, land on the one.
Yeah.
When I saw you do that, I was like, damn.
Cool.
Yeah, I fucking love that.
I actually, people have commented on that. Well, I think on Moaning in Moonlight.
Yeah, listen to this one also.
I think that's the song where that really has like a moment in the song. Like that interlude, like right before the chorus, you know?
Yeah.
But I actually...
This song is also harmonically pretty interesting. I was like some pretty spicy choices in there. But it's like it serves the lyrics. You don't really hear it.
Right.
But I felt like, it was really interesting.
Yeah,
I mean, you make it really interesting. I must say I'm a bit sometimes bored of singer-songwriter music, but I really like yours. What you mentioned about your song... Chameleons. I mean, I also at first I mentioned it because I wanted to talk about the lyrics maybe a little bit, but I felt that makes me think of the idea of a song and what it really is. So maybe that's a bit of a I don't know, of an unorthodox idea.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when I think about like lyric writing and stuff. That song, I really tried. I was very intentional about trying to make it a narrative sort of structure.
Because it's about superficial people.
Yeah, exactly. And in a way, it's something that we can all sort of relate to some extent, where sometimes you get into like an uncomfortable situation or like a situation you're not used to. And then this face comes up. You know what I mean?
I know definitely what you mean. I mean, I'm used to parties. I've been going to parties for a long time. But I still cannot deal with that effectively. You know what I mean? I'm not a party guy.
Yeah, but I guess, I've heard nice things about the song, but actually to be honest, that's a song I really want to go back to and rewrite.
Yeah?
Because I felt the pull for me for songwriting has always been it's always been expression. You talked about it with Chris, it's about expressing yourself, but I always wanted to connect, I want to dig deeper into people.
Okay.
I think I've always been drawn to, first of all, I started songwriting about love songs. So it was like my heartbreak and stuff. And it's very introspective. But
I love the heartbreaking. The heartbreaking phase is a phase we all have to go through.
Yeah, well, I'm still there, man. But
but it's all about the how. There are many ways to.
Yeah, but yeah, I felt like with Chameleons, I didn't feel like I dug deep enough to this character. I like in the song, it's
lyrically or musically. Or both?
Lyrically.
Lyrically, okay.
Yeah. I felt like it was kind of a description of what happens, and there's a subtle, there's the line, where do we lie?
Yeah.
Under the skin. But I don't know. I think I would have expressed what I wanted to say better if I focused on one person and just told a story about one person who was going through that. And
okay, because you are putting yourself in the shoes of a character in that song.
Yeah.
And you're describing a reality from his or her perspective.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, when you do that, you definitely inject a bit of yourself into the person. I think, always.
You have to project a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that's where honesty comes from too. But yeah, I wanted to go back there and really dig a bit deeper into how this individual deals with that. Like, it was supposed to be, in my mind, the story is a person who notices that this is happening and that they want to be genuine, but they don't know how to do that.
Yeah, which is an interesting catch-22.
Yeah.
It's a weird situation to be in, right? Be natural.
Yeah.
If you have to be something, you're not natural.
Exactly, and it's a controversial statement to say, like, be natural, or just try to be natural is what people say, and it's like, well, if you're trying, then you're not.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Natural.
a self-defeating exercise.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's funny because I was going in a complete different direction with this at first.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because I thought that you were talking more about the music, and I wanted to ask the question of what is a song really, and that might sound like some kind of a masturbatory question, like a philosophical, but it's true because, I mean, a song is not a recording. You can have a violin play the guitar part and it's still the same song. You can strip it down completely and play it only with guitar and voice and it's still the same song. And then you can do mashups and stuff, and then we start to blur this line. And what I heard with Chameleon is that I hear an entire band playing that song because it's so funky. It's just my brain extrapolates on what is already there, and it's like I hear a band when I listen to the song. So I thought you were mentioning about maybe changing the arrangement and stuff, but I love it how it is, like, and it's really interesting also. I mean, not only the song you have, but also what it makes people, like the effect it causes in their brains. I mean, I'm aware that we're all different, but
yeah.
so maybe it evokes something completely different to these people, but it's just the choices that you make. And I mean, for example, if you gave me the lyrics to that song and you made me read them, I would have imagined a totally different song,
Right.
And it's really interesting to see this discrepancy between the music and the lyrics and how they are reconciliated and how they shed a different light on each other, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I gotta say, I didn't even think about that very much when I was writing the song. It was just like... But I guess I'm pretty casual about my decision for that kind of stuff. If it feels right, then it feels right. And then I just go for it,
Yeah. Probably the best way to go about it.
I think so. I think especially in like creative endeavors, I think that's probably the best way to go about it.
Yeah.
There's always a danger of overthinking things. And then,
that's definitely my struggle.
Yeah. Well, same, man. Same. I think, I don't know about you, but especially for me when I started school, I started getting very conscious about my writing process and hearing things in class about like different like techniques to like improve your lyric writing or things like this,
Yeah.
But I feel like really improvement in creative endeavors, they happen in the background a bit. It's not really something that I go home and do homework on before I write my next song, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, you're saying it's more, if I understand correctly, it's more something that you put in the back of your mind and you let it ferment or come to fruition or however, and then you...
Yeah.
Man, it's funny that you would say that because Michael Brecker, I don't know if you know him, but he's he's dead now, but he was a super famous jazz saxophone player, and he was playing in the Brecker Brothers, and he was saying that when he was working on a specific concept, like musical concept, like incorporating some kind of lick into his playing, or it would take up to 6 months before it would show up in his improvisations. So he would practice it, he would chat it in the practice room, and then he would forget about it, and then one day, like, I don't know, like 2 a.m. in a smoky night in, I don't know, on a jam session in Chicago or whatever, he would just like play the lick naturally and it would come out and it would be part of his vocabulary.
Right.
And it kind of reminds me of what you're saying right now, is that is this, it's paradoxical, but the more you try to make it happen, the less it happens.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I've definitely been guilty of sometimes, like, I have this, like, a lick or something, maybe not exactly a lick in my case, but like an idea, that a musical concept that I really like and I want to incorporate in my music. And I've tried injecting it into a song, and it just ends up being, it just sounds
Forced.
Yeah, forced and fake. And yeah, and you kind of you lose that sense of genuineness, in the song.
Yeah.
So it's weird. Like, maybe you touched on this with Chris a bit, but well, like creativity, we don't really know where it comes from. I think it like you said, I think it's this, all the knowledge you've accumulated, it just sits in the back of your head. And when you're actually writing, you just write. And then
Yeah.
you don't know where the stuff comes from,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, it's a bit of a. I mean, it's really a strange subject to think about. It's really weird. I mean, the way I see it, and of course my thoughts on it change all the time, but is that I have basically three ways of writing music. I either write with my brain, and that's what I do all the time. It's like, oh, I have a wonderful concept. I'm going to do a 5/4 song, and then I'm going to metric modulate back into 120 BPM to do a 4/4 song. Like stuff like that, you know? Completely stupid ideas. And it's like, I want to do it because it's cool. And then it sounds like shit. More often than not. That is like writing with your brain. You know, you have a concept, and you try it out, but that doesn't work all the time. And then there is writing with your hands. So if you play guitar, which you do, you know what it means. It's like you just let your hands play, and muscle memory does its job, and bam, you come up with something. The problem with that is that you tend to play the same thing over and over. And a good trick around it is to play in DADGAD or like change your tuning. That's like pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure. I don't believe I feel like we don't have control over creativity, but I think the best we can do is to like invite it.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of those things, like change your tuning.
Yeah.
And then it kind of
immerse yourself in a different environment to see how you react. It's like a weird dissociation process.
Yeah.
And the third way would be writing with your ear, and that is the best. I mean, for me, I would just like play something, and then I hear something, and I'm like, oh, what was that? And then I try to transcribe it from my ear, and that always sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Because it's already there. You know what I mean? I don't know if you can relate to that, if that's how you...
Yeah, I mean, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like you're talking about like when you hear stuff in your head, like, you mean you pick something up from your improv?
No. That would be writing with my hands.
Right. Yeah.
And if you're like a killer musician, there is no dissociation there. So you just play stuff that you hear immediately.
Yeah.
Which is not really my case, I have to admit. So sometimes I hear, like, I don't know, I just play something, and then I hear the rest of the phrase just pops up in my brain.
Yeah, no, I totally relate to that. I think that's when I'm happiest. Like I'm always happiest with the results from those kinds of moments, you know.
Yeah, because that always works, like, pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much. I there are the off days when I'm like, oh, this sounds wicked in my head, and then I play it and I'm like, this is actually shit.
Yeah.
The odd days, but most of the time, yeah. And I always feel like those are the ones that are most genuine ideas, the ones that just pop in your head. Don't know where it comes from. It doesn't matter, but it's like an idea that you consider worthwhile, and it excites you. You know.
Yeah, I would. I relate to that actually, because even old ideas that I've written a while ago that I've produced this way, they still remain. I still like them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a weird situation to be in. I wanted to ask you about that actually, because it's like you have to split your brain in two. You have to like force a dissociation there, because you have to have a part that experiments, so that you just like put it on autopilot and it creates, and you need to have another part that judges, and you need to put them to separate them. And also, that's what you were just saying, the part about meta creativity, or where you would create situations in which you would be free to be creative.
Right.
So you would put yourself, I don't know, like lock yourself in a room for a day, or change your tuning, or...
Yeah. Well, I mean, I totally know what you mean about like having to separate that more critical side of you, and the part of you that just lets your creativity flow. But I've been thinking about this, and I think when I'm writing, I just write, you know, but oftentimes what I'll do is, once I kind of hit a point where I'm like, okay, I've gotten all the ideas I have right now out, right? And I take
Mhm.
a break. That the critical moment is when I come back to the project and I play it back. I usually always record whatever I'm working on for like however much of a section I have. And in that, it's, to me, it seems like it's always the first impression. Like that's the one I trust the most when I listen back to the recording.
Mhm.
And you have a little sense of objectivity there. And that's when I get to like, I don't know, the pre-chorus or something. I'll go like, no, that didn't quite work. And then I just run with that.
Mm.
And go like, that's not where I wanted it to go. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, yeah, you get to be in the shoes of someone who would listen to it for the first time, almost, not quite, but like.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's yeah. You have to deal with this, the knowledge that you know, the fact that you know that your perception is going to change every time you listen to it. So even though you listen to the same song over and over, every time it sounds different.
Yeah, for sure.
Which sounds crazy.
Yeah. But I think what we have to be careful about as artists is like sometimes you can start overthinking when you're trying to be objective. But I like that split second moment when you just have like, I don't like this idea.
Mhm.
It's like your brain doesn't have enough time to like lie to yourself. It doesn't allow you to like make excuses and think about your subjectivity. It's just like an instinctive response.
That is very interesting. It's like the 5 seconds rule.
Yeah,
of
exactly.
creativity.
And that's the one I feel is most reliable. Like I said, because then you don't have time to lie to yourself about anything.
I'm definitely gonna use that. Yeah.
But yeah.
And you played in bands as well, right? In the past.
Yeah, like I dabbled a bit. I never had like a project, like a band project. I tried in high school a bit, but it never really got anywhere. But I've played with some coworkers when I was working in Switzerland over the summers.
Mm-hmm.
These guys had this idea to do like a Woodstock cover band, basically. And they just chose a bunch of the hits from Woodstock 69.
That's pretty cool.
And then we just dressed up like hippies. And
oh, you gotta send me the pictures of that.
Yeah. Well, my profile picture is actually one of... Yeah.
Okay.
So...
hence the haircut. I understand.
Yeah, there's a bandana. You might not be able to see it, but I was trying to go Hendrix. But
okay. You fooled me there.
But yeah, but there it wasn't like a... it was... But it wasn't... I never wrote.
Okay.
With that band. It was just...
Yeah, I mean, if it's a cover band, yeah.
So...
Because the reason I'm asking this is because I'm wondering if you have any experience writing with a band. Or if you always wrote all by yourself, alone.
Yeah, I've tried, but admittedly, I'm really used to writing by myself. And I find it difficult when I write with a band. But I've started writing more like doing some collaborations like me and Eliot.
Oh yeah, I heard the one also with Eliot, which is absolutely amazing.
Oh, thanks.
Oh yeah, the 2 tracks you did with him on his album Gxldsmith.
Thanks.
Yeah, that was awesome. I mean, I was kicking myself for not listening to it earlier.
Oh, nice. Well,
yeah,
thanks.
it's really amazing.
Well,
it's a very different thing though.
It was that was actually a challenge, and it was a welcome challenge because I have been trying to get out of my comfort zone little by little, you know. But I don't want to throw I've tried throwing myself into the deep end, but I was like, I'm trying to bite off more than I can chew. But
with that project or with other?
No, in general, like in the past, I've tried writing with bands, but it just didn't really work.
Yeah.
But his was like a welcome challenge. That was, I didn't do stuff like that. I don't know how I would describe his music. Like,
yeah.
What would you?
Wow. Now you're asking me for
Yeah,
That's really not my area of expertise.
Yeah, well, but you know, it's
like
very,
producer music, like electronic music. It's very, but then there are very spicy chord progressions that I like, very jazzy and I know he knows about jazz harmony, and so you can really feel that.
right.
There are these wonky rhythms that I absolutely love.
Yeah.
A la J. Dilla, Jacob Collier, and whatever.
No, he's great.
Oh man, I mean, at least on the tracks with you, I think it was the first one I listened to. I don't have the name right now. I'll be sure to link it as well. But yeah, there is this wonky beat that is just right in some weird pocket that is tickling you the right way.
Right.
And I really love that. And it, of course, it's much better if you listen to it on a proper system.
Yeah. That was actually a challenge too, is like singing to something where the beat's like dragging.
Yeah.
Or, you know.
Yeah, it's just like dragging and going faster on some bits of the beat. Like the kick is, I don't know if that's the case, but you know, sometimes you have the kick that is a bit forward, but the snare is dragging.
Yeah.
And so it gives you this feeling of like holes moving castle. Yeah. You know, that thing is walking around, but you don't know how it stands up. You don't know how it's possible that it doesn't crash like this.
Yeah.
But somehow it still can go from one place to another.
Yeah, and it was like, and you kind of have to internalize the rhythm a bit, like the overall rhythm that's kind of suggested there, you know. Yeah, just for like his sake, I think people should check out that album because it's really, really awesome.
I also love the cover.
Yeah.
I think it's very nice. Yeah, I mean it fits with the music. It's strange.
Yeah,
but in a nice way.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, that was fun. I think this one track called "Slower Now" was a bit more like.
I think that's the one I was talking about.
Okay, yeah.
And then there is the other one called Kako, or how is it called? The other one?
Keko. Maybe?
Keko. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Slower now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's one. Yeah.
That was one of those where like the melody just like kind of came pretty much right off the bat. I set up my microphone and I was like, I'm just gonna mess around and try some stuff, and it was like spontaneous.
So that's how it happened. He gave you pretty much a finished beat.
Yeah, the production was pretty much there. Like, he was still tweaking the sounds and stuff, but the structure was there and everything. And it was like he sent it to me and he said, "Can you make some vocals on this?
Do your thing."
Yeah, exactly.
Do you produce?
I'm trying to, but I'm still such a newbie.
Yeah, so am I.
At it. But I like it. I really like. There is one song on my Bandcamp that I posted that is like a production song. Maybe you didn't see that, maybe. But
yeah, the third one, Ayor.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more of a production song. Yeah, I wanted to ask you about this actually too.
Okay.
Man,
yeah.
I wish I feel kind of bad because we have only 2 Macs, but we have Mr. Colin Mulhally in the house, right there, sat right next to me, and now we're talking about production, and I'm just talking out of my ass. And this guy, I mean, could answer all the questions and more. You know what I mean? Yeah, I'll make sure. So yeah, but no, I wanted to touch on that song as well. Also, the title is a bit intriguing to me. I was wondering if it's a reference to Winnie the Pooh, or
the character from Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah,
Eeyore. I just
Eeyore.
Yeah, I think that's how they pronounce it.
Yeah. I don't know. Did you see the Italian version growing up?
No. I didn't.
Okay.
I actually never watched Winnie the Pooh, but I just knew about the character.
Okay.
But that kind of gloomy kind of thing, and that I guess that song it just felt like kind of gloomy, and I was like, maybe it was an idea that maybe I'd do a concept album where like revolve it around that image of this character that's kind of a bit gloomy.
Yeah.
And I thought it might be fun to do like a production album that kind of centers around that theme. But I have way too many other projects to get my shit together and actually sit down and...
It's hard to pick a direction sometimes.
It is, yeah, because I'm trying to get into the composition, like video game composition.
Oh,
and
wow. I
composing
want to
for
talk
media.
about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's some cool stuff out there, man.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. There is a Mick Gordon.
No.
Oh, man, that guy, Mick Gordon. And I love video games so much that I have a strict policy with them and I don't play them because I know how much I love them.
It'll like destroy your life.
Yeah, or, you could see it either way. From the outside, it would look like that. From the inside, it would just be pure joy, probably.
Right.
But too much joy, like in Pinocchio, the island with the kids.
Oh, right.
Like it's like joy,
yeah,
but
yeah.
it's a bit too much.
Yeah, I see.
But yeah, this guy did the soundtrack for the latest Doom.
Okay.
Man, what he did is incredible. Like he mixed, and I'm really into gent and progressive metal kind of stuff, like 8-string guitar, super low tune kind of stuff. He managed to mix that with some kind of electronic music, and he created. His process is just incredible. I'll send you some links if you're interested.
Yeah.
He gave some masterclasses of like how the trial and error process he went through, because that's kind of we are touching on what we were talking about before, because he has Doom. So Doom is a very specific universe and it's not a very happy one, and he has to find a way of transmitting this vibe, but at the same time he has the soundtrack from the previous Dooms that are like untouchable. You have to base yourself on that somehow, but you also have to do something new.
Yeah.
And he managed to do that by mixing synths. I don't want to spoil it for you. You have to watch this masterclass, but he did some crazy funny things, and he's really interesting. He gave also a podcast. There's a podcast on URM, Unstoppable Recording Machine, where he talks about his process when it comes to production. And he also has like this all these methods to squeeze the creative juices out of himself.
Oh, interesting.
Which is also what we're talking about. This kind of, I would call it Ulysses mindset, where you find a way to tie yourself to the mast because you're not going to be able to resist the sirens. And that's the only way to make it alive. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So he has these methods to force himself to be creative. Very interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, he made a track with Fredrik Thordendal of Meshuggah.
Okay.
And this track is the heaviest guitar sound I've heard in my life. Like it's like in Back to the Future. The beginning of the first movie.
Yeah.
And he plays a guitar riff on a gigantic amp, and like the whole room blows up.
Right.
That's how it felt the first time I heard that. Ah, man.
That's pretty cool.
Oh yeah, that's the best guitar sound I ever heard. Like, and it's so crisp in the high end, but the lows are just kicking you in the stomach. Yeah, but sorry, I went on a bit of a tangent there.
No.
It's
great.
wow.
Yeah, no.
Mick Gordon, man.
Yeah, I'm not familiar. Because I actually never played Doom, so I don't know the music there.
Do you have video games soundtracks that you enjoy?
Yeah. Well, yeah, loads. I mean, I think these ones might be biased, but like the Legend of Zelda soundtracks, like just as a kid, like they just send me right back. Same with Final Fantasy. I feel bad I can't name these composers' names, but
yeah, and you have no excuse because you're a fluent Japanese speaker. So
also, yeah,
no excuse.
Yeah, I'm a shame on my society.
No. Please don't exaggerate. Yeah, you're safe with us.
But yeah, those ones. But actually, recently this.
Shame.
Or is disgrace? Disgrace would be the right word.
Yeah, that's a bit. That's
Yeah, in Japan we're big on honor and stuff. So
yeah.
There you go.
8-bit music theory?
Yes, I do.
I love this YouTube channel.
Yeah, that I have to be completely honest.
Yes.
90% of it goes right over my head, but I watch it anyways.
Yeah, because it's just so entertaining.
Yeah.
I forced the guys in my former flat to check out some of these videos. Like, it's just so interesting on like of course the music, but the way I mean, it's exactly what we're talking about. The way they manage to make new things by recycling old stuff in a creative way.
That one's interesting. Like, considering that, what if I got work to do on like a franchise, you know, on like the fifth installment of a franchise, and I have to do the original soundtrack justice while being original myself. That sounds really. I have no idea how I would go about that, to be totally honest.
But I could see how that would be very fulfilling, because you have an analytical part where you soak in what is already there, and then you get to create. So you're not creating in a vacuum at all. And maybe that is maybe an attractive part?
Yeah, maybe. Or at least like the way I would think about it is maybe it kind of acts as an anchor. Like it's not a completely blank canvas, and you're not free falling into the void of, you know, creativity, like absolute creativity.
Blank page paralysis.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so it might
the dreaded
be.
blank page.
Yeah. But I like on a completely opposite note, that new Zelda, the Breath of the Wild.
Oh yeah.
Like I think that they brought on a new composer, and the main theme, I don't have you heard it?
Oh yeah, I heard it, because actually it was a karma backlash for me.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, because I played video games as a kid, and my brother was just sitting by my side tantalized, and I would never let him play. He would just watch me play. And now that's exactly what he did with me with Breath of the Wild. Like he gave me the controller once for 2 minutes, I got killed, and then I never touched it again. But it's like, what do you expect? I just touched it for 2 minutes and I have the... So I was just sitting by himself when he played through the whole game. I think it was 2 summers ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just watching how beautiful it is.
Yeah.
And listening to the music, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. I actually haven't played it, but I did listen to the main theme. And I watched the 8-bit music theory where he kind of dissects that.
How it changes. How it evolves.
But it's amazing. It's kind of... to me, it was like an interesting study of using themes and motifs, because I think it was like the A and B section are like actually the exact same melody or something, or the intro melody is actually let's say the most climactic part of the song, the C section. It's actually that theme, but like,
twisted,
chopped up and
changed. Oh,
yeah. And so
I
it's
have to watch it again. I kind of forgot, but
yeah. So in that sense, it's like it's not simple, but do you know what I mean? It's like they just this composer just took this theme and just moved it around in a way, and I think it does on a subconscious level. I think when you listen to it, everything sounds coherent.
Yes.
You know?
That is the beauty of it, is that you're playing with people's unconscious.
Yeah.
Because they are playing the game. They are not focused on your music. But somehow, I mean, to do a parallel with computer hacking and stuff, it's like that's opening a port or a backdoor, and you have direct access to the software.
Right.
And you can just like, that's why video game music is like, I mean, music in general is just this thing that gets screwed inside your head. And even people like 100 years old with dementia, they still recognize the music that they were listening to when they were like 13. It's a different kind of memory, and it doesn't go away.
Yeah,
it's really interesting. But yeah, so you get to play with that, and I think it's really incredible.
Yeah, and I think it's a good, like, I don't know about you, but I think I definitely went through a phase of thinking that a good song, to make a good song, I have to make it complicated. Or, you know. Yeah,
that's my number one problem. I mean, as I told you.
Right. I mean, I still slip into that, but but it's just interesting that not only is that like something that you can do, like take a theme and chop it up and recycle it, but it also, I think it definitely does have this sense, this effect of keeping you like making the whole song sound like it's part of the same world, or like there's this underlying message that's always there, you know?
Yeah.
Which is, I don't know about doing it in pop music or anything, but definitely in scoring for media, I think it kind of helps carry the narrative.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's the hard part. I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like it's somewhat of a theory of mind problem. I've been thinking about that a little bit. And you know, when you have kids, I mean, of course, kids develop, and Piaget, the Swiss psychologist, showed, or more or less, his psychology, so showed that they tend to go through the same stages. They tend to develop at the same, I mean, the steps are the same for every kid, even though it might not take the same amount of time. And at some point in their development, they have what we call theory of mind. So, for example, if you have a kid and you have a parent, and you have, I don't know, a scientist in front with a ball, and the parent is blindfolded, and and the scientist hides the ball somewhere in the room, the kid before a certain age doesn't grasp the concept that the information that they have, because they saw the scientist hide the ball, is not shared by the parent, and that the parent, because the parent was blindfolded, they don't know where the ball is. You know what I mean? So they cannot understand that someone has different information than they do.
Oh.
Because
Interesting.
yeah, because to do that, you have to be able to create a simulation of the other person's mind
Right.
in your own mind. That is the theory of mind. And so, wait, that person didn't have access to the same percepts that I did. That person didn't see the scientist hit the ball, so they don't know where it is. And I feel like we have kind of an opposite problem when we write music. So that's a bit far-fetched. But in a sense, we see the score, we know the chords, we know the harmony. And we have to put ourselves in the shoes of a listener who maybe he's paying attention, maybe he's not, or she. And they don't know anything about the scaffolding that is the only thing that you see. They only see the building that is finished. And so you have somehow to put yourself in their shoes to develop like musical theory of mind or whatever, to understand the experience that is going to be theirs, and to be able to build your scaffolding taking this into account. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I know what you mean.
And so it doesn't matter if it's simple or complicated, because that is not the vantage point that's not the lens through which you should look at your music. But it's so hard to put yourself into these people's shoes.
Yeah. I think I totally get what you're talking about. I feel kind of like I'm pretty self-centered. I don't think I think about how people are gonna.
Yeah, but the thing is, it has to be subconscious, because otherwise you're forcing it, and you're trying to retro-engineer people's wishes, and that's a sure way to catastrophe. So it's even more complicated than that.
Yeah. I mean, I think here it kind of goes back to what I said before, where like it's my first impression that I kind of trust.
Yeah.
You know, where hopefully that's what other people are feeling too.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm. But I mean, that's kind of what you're doing in a way, because you are relying on your first impression. So you're like, bam, you don't give yourself time to like think about the theory, the harmony, the guitar chord, the this and the that.
Yeah.
But or maybe it's just that, and maybe some people are shaking their heads right now, but maybe it's just that I just went completely haywire right now.
No, it's an interesting
that
idea.
That is a crazy theory. That wouldn't be the first one.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. That's beyond me though, but it's super interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a theory, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure we can test it, so it's not even wrong. Like, it's not a scientific theory. So yeah, it's just a mental model way of seeing the world, and I hope it's useful. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think these kinds of things they're good ways to like make sense of the world.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, you need to have mental representations of some kind.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's also that's why earlier I was asking you about if you ever wrote with a band, because it is such a different process.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Like, how would you, from your experience, what would you?
I feel like you know, do you feel like sometimes when you're with a friend, you're like having a cup of coffee and you're like, okay, bye, and then you're parting ways and you're on your own again. It's a completely different mind space.
Yeah.
There is the social mind space and the personal mind space. So you have this differences in perception, and that's kind of, I mean, of course, it's just a way of seeing it again. But when you're creating, you have to assign these different roles to different parts of your brain. And when you're in a band, you can have one opinion and defend it, and it's more of a political, way of being, where you defend something. And it's funny because when I was writing music, for example, with Altair would have an idea, and I wouldn't like it at first, so I would be like sulking, and then he would finish the idea, and then I would have some kind of an epiphany. I was like, wow, that sounds amazing. And before I was like,
about
no,
the same idea.
Yeah, the same idea, but just finished.
Okay.
So I did not, I mean, it's a very humbling experience because I did not see where he was going with that. But then, so I was like, okay, and before I was like, no, let's not do that, blah, blah, blah. And then with time, you learn to suspend disbelief, kind of, and to see where it goes. But then Altair would be like, oh no, I don't like it, let's scrape this idea. And I would be like, no, we're keeping the idea. That's a very good idea. And then so we had arguments for hours. And thankfully we are friends and we did not punch each other.
Right.
Because we care about each other's feelings and stuff. But yeah, so we would have arguments it's like a sketch. Like we would have arguments in different directions. He would change his mind. He's like, you're right. And I would change my mind, like an old couple,
Right. That's hilarious. I think, that's super difficult. I think the thing you were saying about like when you leave your friend and then when you're alone, you're in a completely different mindset. I think that's, for me, the challenge has been trying to figure out that vision. You're talking about how like Altair had the beginning of an idea, but you didn't know where he was thinking of taking it, or like the bigger picture of the idea. And I think that's just been the challenge. I think that is a challenge when you're working with people, is like trying to figure out, like, you can't help but have your own vision for the song that you're writing, and then somebody else comes up with a suggestion that's not quite in the picture of the vision you have of the song. And it's about the way I look at it is kind of like trying to get a sense of where the other person's like mental wavelength is, and you're trying to cruise at the same level. You know what I mean? But I think what I've done that wasn't very good for me was that I just kind of completely sacrificed my own vision, and I've gone completely with somebody else's idea, and then that's not fulfilling either. Yeah. You know what I mean?
That's a trade-off, like, because either you are finding a war inside your own head, or you are putting several brains on the problem. If you're aligned, it is heaven on earth, it's the best. But if you're not, then you have to compromise.
Right.
And you have to be ready to do that. So it all depends of if you're, or maybe you are all very specialized. So you have like maybe a guitar player, singer, mastermind, and then the drummer does his thing, and he's a drummer, so he has a very high resolution mind picture of what cool drums on that track would sound like. And the other band members, like, they don't feel too strongly about it, and they kind of like it, and maybe it cross-pollinates with an idea from the bass player, and they come with something that works together. And it works this way because everybody has kind of an assigned role, even if they sometimes step out of it to give advice or suggestions, but it's never one-on-one, same level. The drummer is like, has the final say when it comes to the drum parts, and that's also how it can work. Yeah. But the thing is, like, there is always pros and cons, and the problem with that is that if you have a grand vision or a grand plan, it is more, there is a random aspect to it. It's more random. It's always random, but in that case, it's like a stochastic process, or where it's just like happens like this. It's an emergent property of everybody's skill, and then you have a song, and it's a bit like nobody really knows where it came from, but it can also be great.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, there is no right or wrong. It's just at the end of the day.
No, yeah, but I think my benchmark, I guess, for when I'm working with don't you think it's funny? It's like working with like a band or just doing a simple collaboration is kind of like building a relationship with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's kind of an integral part of working together with somebody, and that totally affects like the ideas that you come up with and put together or decide to put together. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like you have to. Yeah, it's a holistic process. It's really hard to compartmentalize. It's not, but I think it's a feature of creative jobs. I mean, all jobs are creative in some respects. Maybe you could find exceptions here and there, and all jobs have a more technical aspect to them.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a feature of that. Yeah. But then again, I mean, this is just a feature, I would say more generally, of constraints. And constraints are good. Paradoxically enough, Stravinsky was saying this. Strictures, thou they bind, strangely liberate the mind. That's Hofstadter also talking about that.
Yeah. And who else was it? Forget what the exact quote was like.
By whom? Do you have the name?
Playwright, director. Shit, I'm totally blanking out.
Yeah, I can always link it like in the footnotes.
Yeah, but I think it was something like the enemy of creativity is like a lack of limitations.
Yeah.
Or something.
Which seems completely paradoxical, because you would think the freer you are, the more you create.
Yeah. I think about it a bit like that process of setting limitations, but and at the same time having this creative mind which is chaotic and bizarre and free. I kind of look at it like you know when you go bowling with kids.
Bowling or bowling?
Bowling. Not bowling. But
I usually don't do that with kids.
Right. Well, I used to work at a summer school, and we used to take the kids there, and it always ends up in the gutter, right? And they have no fun. So what you do is they set up these barriers on the side.
Oh, yeah.
And then the ball is completely free to do what it wants to, but it has these barriers on the side. And that's kind of how I think about limitations. Like, it just keeps it somewhere going in a certain direction, but you have free reign to like move around as much as you like within that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's interesting.
But yeah, it's I don't know about you, but even though I know for a fact that limitations are good for creativity, sometimes I get really hesitant. I just want to be like a stubborn artist and be like, no, I don't want any.
Yeah, I'm an artist.
Yeah, exactly.
Je suis artiste.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a battle against yourself, for sure. I wanted to ask you about the 2 short demos that you did when it comes to film writing.
Oh, yeah.
Is it called, like, it's Repeat and Faceless, right?
Yeah.
So how did you limit yourself to create these? Because it seems to me that these have a specific concept. Did it come before or after?
What do you mean? Can you say that again? Like
the titles and the content, the content of the video.
Yeah. So I mean, the process was I put the videos together first, and at the beginning, I wanted to make like a short narrative, like a short 2.5 minute, short story or something. But the only tools I had were free, royalty-free stock footage. And it started becoming apparent that it was really difficult to make a narrative with that.
Yeah.
So it ended up being a bit abstract, like, repeat is just, repeating these this machinery objects that have this repetitive nature about them. And I honestly didn't think about it much. I was like, oh, I think I could do that. And
But so you wrote the music afterwards?
Yeah, I wrote the music afterwards. And actually, I didn't post the other ones on there, but the idea of that whole project was I did 2 different scores to each film.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. Okay.
Which would have been interesting to show you, but alas, I did not.
That would have been nice. Yeah, because you can show 2 different directions. It's like a parallel universe, kind of.
Yeah. And that was interesting. I kind of discovered that sometimes you're kind of limited in how differently you can interpret a film. Like the repeat one was very easy because it was just very neutral, and the song that's up there is like the trio piece, right? Like violin and stuff. It's very melancholic. And then the other one, I decided to do a bit more sound design, and I made it really ominous and a bit creepy. So yeah, that was kind of fun, and those ideas were just really spontaneous.
Yeah, wow! I would never have imagined that's how it came about, because I experienced it kind of differently. Have you heard of Qatsi?
No.
Oh, you have to watch that.
You're gonna have to send me some.
I think you're gonna love it, especially because I also wanted to touch on meditation.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
And I feel like looking at Qatsi, Baraka, and Samsara, and looking at your movies, there is some effect and of maybe almost semantic saturation, where it's like you see one normal thing. It's like if I say buffalo, 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 buffalo. If you have one word and the first time you don't think anything about it, it just sounds like a word. But then as you repeat it, its characters change. And there is a fancy German word for that, because there is always a fancy German word for everything.
Right.
But that's how I felt looking at your clips. Because you see people walking around and there is like a common thread. And in the other one, you see things that are turning, that are doing the same movement over and over and repeating. And so it makes you look at this otherwise completely normal event that makes you look at it differently. And I feel like it's kind of meditative in its quality. It's like a bit like if you do Vipassana meditation, that's what you do. You take a different look at things. Right,
I see. That's really interesting. I don't feel like that's how the ideas came about.
No.
But that's really interesting. I mean, it totally could. This is one of those things that might have been what was happening when I was rewatching these clips on a subconscious level, and it came out that way.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just telling you how I experienced it.
Yeah, and that's really interesting.
But yeah, I think you might be interested in watching Qatsi. That's a series of 3 movies.
Mm-hmm.
And Qatsi is a Hopi word for life. It's a word it's a Native American. I mean, the Hopi tribe is a Native American tribe.
Is this the one that was scored by Philip Glass?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
Yeah, I only saw like a few minutes of it.
Yeah, I watched their 3-hour movies.
Okay,
and,
really?
And people thought I was crazy. But I think that was my first experience with meditation. Because that makes you meditate. Because you see pictures of nature and you see pictures of just human life, scenes, with the music, like the minimalistic music of Philip Glass that is just a torrent, just a blast in your face. And your equanimity, you're equanimous because you see the things and you don't really know. Usually you're waiting for the image to dictate how you should feel about it.
Right. Yeah.
And then you're like, nature, good, people, bad. This kind of... But then it's like 9 hours of that stuff.
Okay.
And then it makes you detach from it in some strange way.
Interesting. Like, so you came out feeling like totally different about the imagery than how you started with? Is that what you mean? Or
Yeah, in a way, it's kind of what we were talking about with listening to your own track.
Right.
The track and the movie, even though they are pretty much the same, because they are the same, as you watch it or as you listen to it, they become more and more of a mirror that is reflecting your change of state to yourself. And at first, even though you're watching or listening to the same thing, you can experience this detachment, and it's the fact that you don't judge. Like Qatsi, there is nothing that gives you that really gives you a hint of how to feel about it. They are the titles.
You mean it doesn't like suggest?
No, it doesn't tell you if it. I mean, maybe the titles, because there is like Nikoi Qatsi, Koyanis Qatsi and stuff. They have weird titles. I don't remember all of them, but there is one, for example, that means life out of balance. So you could imagine that there is some kind of criticism there, and maybe from the Native American point of view, that there would be a criticism of civilization and industrialization.
Right.
But that's already far-fetched.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. I mean, but I guess like my impression was that I couldn't help but like start interpreting stuff from, especially the music.
Yeah.
I think that's what suggests something, like it's some sort of meaning to accompany it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Did you not feel that like the music was taking you in a certain direction? Or?
Yeah.
But
it's funny. It's like we need meaning, and we're gonna find it no matter what.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if it's too obvious, like for example with a series on Netflix, you have people on Reddit like having crazy theories of what is really happening in the series. Like, they go deeper, and if you have no narrative at all, no character, like in Qatsi, or also Baraka and Samsara, which are two other movies made by one of the guys that worked on Qatsi.
Mm-hmm.
You have none of that, and you're still like, you have this impulse to interpret it.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, welcome back for part 2, Mr. Gaby Sforza.
Thank you very much.
I wanted to go in a slightly different direction this time and ask you about your upbringing and where did you grow up, what languages do you speak, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, so I was born in Japan, in Tokyo, Japan. I lived there until I was 8, and then after that it's been a lot of moving, but I first moved to Geneva, Switzerland, and I lived there for 2 years. Moved to Lugano.
So you learned French?
I learned a bit of French.
Okay.
But don't test me on it.
No, it's fine. You speak already many more languages than I do, so.
No, well, this is an interesting. I'm gonna segue right off here, but I've been thinking like I have picked up these. I speak Japanese and Italian as well.
Yeah,
but I wouldn't say I'm completely fluent.
In both?
In both.
Okay.
Yeah.
You mean you're not a native level?
Exactly. I can carry myself perfectly fine in casual conversations, but I might stumble over a few words and stuff.
Okay. And is it? Do you notice it when you're reading that your buffer is smaller?
Yeah, for sure. And especially, I don't know if this is just my impression of it, but I feel like with Italian, written Italian is very different from spoken Italian.
Oh yeah, because I can kind of understand written Italian. I can read it, and I can really understand most of it. But if people are speaking it, it's like.
Yeah.
I think I would maybe understand Italian with a French accent, like hardcore French pronunciation of Italian words.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I can kind of read it, which is interesting. Like you can kind of cross-reference words if you know another Latin language, and if you know a little bit of like Greek and Latin roots, you can usually understand what it's about. If it's not too complicated, of course.
For sure, yeah. But I guess like my point was like there are a few people in my life that I know, like my sister and one of my friends and my father, like they just seem to have this crazy ability to retain languages.
Mm-hmm.
And like for me, it's always if I go back to Japan or something and I start speaking in Japanese, it's kind of like a rough start. I'm like stalling a bit, and then it starts coming back to me after some exposure, you know. But some people just like have it right away, just crazy.
So you have a younger or older sister?
Older.
Yeah. Okay.
Older sister and older brother as well. So I'm the baby of the family. Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah. But yeah, so going back to moving around, so I lived in Geneva, and then I lived in Lugano, Switzerland for 3 years. I moved to Italy, to a town called Lucca in Tuscany.
Okay.
So I was there for 2 years. I went back to Lugano, Switzerland for another 3 years, and that was basically...
Did you move because of your parents' job or a reason like that?
Yeah. My dad's never been like super clear on exactly why, but I do remember he's a producer.
Okay.
And I remember...
It could be a spy or something.
Possibly.
Yeah. I mean, Edward Snowden was working in Switzerland, so there you go.
So yeah.
Is your dad Edward Snowden? No, okay, maybe not. That would be crazy. Wow.
That was the big reveal.
Secret child, yeah. Reveal time.
Yeah. But no, I'm pretty sure I've seen his works, so I'm pretty sure he's a producer. But
yeah. Maybe he's a super good like spy,
yeah,
double agent.
He's really covered his tracks. But yeah, but he was. I remember when I lived in Japan, he was away on business trips a lot.
Okay.
So that was a memory of my childhood, him going away for long stretches of time. And I think at that moment, he works both in Europe and in Japan. And I think at the time, it was just his workload was heavier in Europe, I guess. So.
But your dad speaks Japanese fluently?
Yeah.
He's Italian.
He's Italian.
So he learned it.
Mm-hmm.
Kudos. That must have not been an easy thing.
Yeah, and he also works, with Japanese companies. So his Japanese has to be, that's another level of fluency that you have to get to.
And also maybe a lot of, I don't know if he negotiates or anything, but maybe there are some social cues that you have to be able to identify and act upon.
Yeah, it's different. I don't
know if you mentioned anything about that, or because I wanted to ask you about this. I know this is a question you are asked all the time. But for many people, it seems to be very a strange combination to have. I mean, this is like the ratatouille situation, You have a piece of cheese in one hand and a strawberry in the other, and they taste nice, both. But when you take them both at the same time, that's when the magic happens. Right. So it's an unexpected combination kind of situation,
That's a very flattering analogy.
Yeah. I mean, cheese and strawberry coming from a French guy. Even though I have to go on the record and say that. And maybe some of my fellow countrymen will hate me for it, but I think that the French cheeses are a bit overrated compared to the Swiss ones and the Italian ones. Like, they are at least as good. They are amazing.
Yeah, you might get crucified for that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I love Swiss cheese and Italian cheeses like pecorino and all of these, like you name it, Parmigiano, and I love it.
That's a good point, actually. I think all like the cheeses I like are also either from Switzerland or Italy, like Gruyere.
Oh yeah, Gruyere is I mean, they are different. It's a bit like, in my opinion, a bit like Belgian beer and German beer, and then French cheeses would be a little bit like Belgian beer. A lot of taste, meaning that for some people it's like eating a dead rat. It's impossible, like because of the way it smells. But so it evolves in your mouth. It's a bit like it's a different. Like most things have one taste, but wine and cheese, it's an experience that lasts over 30 seconds to 45 seconds because it really transforms in your mouth.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
That's really true.
Yeah. And the first time I tasted fruit and cheese at the same time, I remember thinking like, because I don't know, somebody must have had this idea at one point, but it's like such an unlikely combination. But it feels like a mix, you know, with like high-end stuff and low-end stuff, and they are so different in the taste that it combines, and it creates something so new, and it doesn't clash.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, kind of like prosciutto melone in Italy. You have the Parma ham.
Oh yeah,
with melon.
Yes.
You know, which is like, it sounds like the most bizarre. Like, to me, it just feels like the most bizarre combination, but actually, goes really well. So,
tell me how that relates to you.
Well, I have no idea what to do with that.
Yeah.
But
no, because I know you're being asked, you know, Japanese people stereotypically are more reserved, you know, they're shyer, and Italian
socially,
people are, and their social cues are so different. So how does it feel to be a third culture kid, as Chris was telling me?
Yeah. I think, like, in that where you're talking about, it was just, there is a slight confusion of, like, identity in terms of, like, my mannerisms, my, the way I am socially. One of the most it wasn't the most interesting thing, but there was an interesting thing from the book that talks about TCKs.
Oh, you read it?
No. I actually haven't read the whole thing. But
okay, you read about it or some parts of it?
Yeah.
I haven't, so...
Okay, yeah. I wish I
interested.
could. Yeah, I'm super interested too. I still need to borrow that book from Chris. But there was this part where it was talking about this anxiety that third culture kids have about greeting people. And it just kicked in. Like, I didn't even realize, like, that made so much sense, because in Japan it's, you know.
Oh, yeah.
It's usually like a polite bow.
Interesting how different these things are.
Yeah, and then on the other hand, in Italy, it's 2 kisses. My grandmother would, like, grab my face. And just, like, go for it.
Yeah,
you know?
With, like, the nice lip sound, like.
Yeah, exactly. Not shy at all. But.
Yeah, you have to be careful not to confuse the two.
Yeah, but then, you know what? But what I started realizing is that I started seeing some of my Italian friends, and when they meet people from, I don't know, the States or something, they have the way they greet people.
Yes.
Like, that's their way to do it. And I realized I don't have that. And that always makes me feel really awkward when I see people. Yeah. Sometimes I give a hug. Sometimes
you have to know, it's like an equation that goes in your brain. And usually when you meet people, you're a bit stressed, you know, it's like a new experience. Yeah. So you have to make the choice and the pressure. It's funny, because I thought you were going to talk about homelessness in a way, the fact that you don't really have a place that you would call home. But actually, this is a symptom of it in many ways.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that when you're in Italy, you're the Japanese guy, and when you're in Japan, you're the Italian guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But and this is really exemplified by the way you greet people. But for me, I mean, maybe it sounds a bit cheesy. We were just talking about it. But for me, you're just a Berliner. And in Berlin, we have kind of this hugging thing that, to me, looks like a mix-up. It's like a pigeon of hugging. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it causes me problems, too, when I go home. Because we are supposed to kiss each other. I mean, I don't know if you know that. But in France, there are different kissing patterns, depending on where you are. So sometimes it's one cheek. Sometimes it's 2 cheeks in one specific order, but you go south and it's the other order. If you start kissing each other on the same, if you mix up the cheeks, it can lead to very uncomfortable situations.
Oh.
Yeah, and then sometimes it's 3 kisses. Oh, it's very complicated. So I go home, and I just went home like 10 days ago, and it was a room full of people I didn't know. So I was a bit like, ooh, social anxiety starts kicking in, and I started to want to shake people's hands, which is so stupid.
Right.
And so there was, I mean, you don't do that in France. I mean, you do it maybe with guys, but That's the rule. And there was this girl looking at me with like strange eyes because I wanted to shake her hand. So she just stood up and I just started kissing everybody. But I mean, kissing everybody in a greeting manner.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. So you get that too a little bit. Then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's true. It's like a very stressful. I mean, it's weirdly.
Yeah. Well, I think for me especially, it's. I mean, I've been living as myself for years, so I'm used to it. But it is kind of, there's a sense of I don't know what the right word for it, like kind of a disappointment when I'm like in Japan or Italy, and that makes me stand out, you know. It makes me feel very other.
What does the greeting?
Yeah, the greeting. I don't know. I've kind of learned to embrace it a bit more. Like I'm just kind of a mix of a bunch of stuff. But
interesting.
But I guess that kind of. I guess I'm kind of going into the topic of like homelessness and like not feeling like I fully identify with either culture.
Yeah.
And it's made very apparent because even when I go to Japan, they just can kind of like sense that I'm not. Like I for listeners who don't know me, I have very predominantly Asian features, you know?
Yeah.
And so
yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, you would think that in Japan, like they might assume that I'm Japanese, but almost immediately they go like, so where are you from?
Yeah, because they notice that you, man, it's really interesting that you would say that. Because I was reading about a study that they showed that you are more likely to identify and store the faces of members of your ethnicity because different ethnicities focus on different parts of the face that vary more. So for example, to me, who is a Caucasian guy, I see immediately that you have the epicanthic folds, you know, like on the corner of your eyes, the Asian eyes.
Right.
But maybe for Japanese people, they look at something else, maybe the shape of your mouth or something like that, and they're like, wow, that is really not Japanese. This guy must be a mix, or, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Interesting.
And also an interesting thing that somebody said is also they pointed out, a Japanese person pointed out, like, yeah, you don't really seem full Japanese, and I asked, like, what is it, like the way I talk or something? They're like, no, it's just kind of like a vibe. And like just generally how I am socially, I guess. Do you think you could put your finger on this? It's really hard to describe, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's very subtle, like micro movements. Like the way you respond to something that somebody said.
Yeah. Maybe your eye patterns, what you're looking at, in what direction, at which speed.
Yeah. Or like subtle like head nods or something, you know?
Yeah.
Very.
It's
small,
crazy. Yeah. It's crazy how attuned we are to these things.
Yeah.
And how we can just pick up something like that. It's pretty insane.
Yeah, and we have no idea either. I think that's the most fascinating thing is a lot of times, I don't know about you, but I feel like you can, like I might be able to pick out something that makes me go, oh, there's something about this person that's interesting. But I need to play catch up with my mind.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not immediately apparent what is catching your attention.
It's crazy that you have the conclusion before the argument.
Yeah.
Kind of. And that's also the problem they seem to have with AI. Because I would have to double check that, but it seems to me that all the deep fakes that we see appearing on the internet, they are generated by neural networks, so which are effectively black boxes. We don't know how it works. We just feed them a ton of data. Like, for example, Joe Rogan had deep fakes made out of him because there is so many hours of him on the internet and of his face that we can sample. And so with trial and error, the AI figures out how to emulate the face of that person and the movements and how words would sound like. But we don't know like there is no code for it. Like it's completely unreadable for us humans. We cannot retro engineer the process.
That's interesting. Yeah. So
And
it's like the computers know something that we don't.
yeah,
in a
but
sense.
yeah. The computer found something through trial and error,
Yeah.
but it's not like a human cannot just take a look at the code and be like, oh, okay. So they track this part of the face and see, and if like when he says the phoneme "e" in that context of such a word, his mouth folds like this.
Yeah.
No, it's just like a brute force process. Yeah, I mean that's how it seems to me, but I think it's deep learning. So deep learning is effectively meaning like, yeah, it's like a black box. We have no idea. We just roll the dice a million times. You know, it's like AlphaZero. I don't know if you heard of AlphaZero. You heard of Deep Blue, the chess engine by IBM, who beat Garry Kasparov in 1996.
That was the first program to beat the chess master, right?
Yeah. Grandmaster in case, like probably the best
right
human chess player to ever walk this earth, or maybe Magnus
disappointing.
Carlsen. Yeah, I mean I don't know. They get better with the years, and now they are training themselves with the machines. You know.
Right.
So I mean, human progress never ceases to develop. But yeah, I got sidetracked there. But yeah, so in recently they beat the best Go player. So you know the game of Go, and it's a game that paradoxically, maybe for you, at least to me, it was strange to hear that, but it's a game that is much harder to capture because it has many more degrees of freedom. So it has more variables than chess. So if you have like 10 to the power of 54 possible different chess games or something like that, if my memory serves me well, you have many more possibilities for Go. So they've managed to beat the best Go player with AlphaGo, but then they used the engine for AlphaGo, which became AlphaZero, and the only thing they input in AlphaZero was the game, was the rules of the game of chess. They didn't feed any information to AlphaZero, and AlphaZero started playing against itself. So no info from the exterior, all generated from inside, and it played like millions and millions of and billions and billions and yeah, that's the joke I do every time. Billions and billions. I mean, many chess games against itself, and it beat every single other chess engine. It destroyed all of them. That is pretty crazy.
That is insane. This is one of those topics that makes me really start to get terrified about AI. Do you like, that's a big topic that's happening nowadays?
Yeah,
like,
I mean everybody talks about it, and there is a big Dunning-Kruger effect to which I'm falling victim right now because I don't know anything about it, and because I know very little about it, I think that I do know more than I actually know, and so I just blabber about it. Like all my friends and everybody's like, yeah, AI, blockchain, all these words.
Yeah, for sure.
But actually it's an idea I never hear, but I kind of take issue with the idea that AIs are better at chess than humans. I disagree.
Yeah, in what way? You mean like?
I disagree in the sense that, you could say, let's say you have an AI that can play tennis.
Yeah.
And so it's just an AI with like 36 rackets. All around the pitch, or how do you call it, like the court.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The tennis court, and it's just like every time you can play anywhere, there is a bat there that is 200 kilometers an hour, and you cannot win. No human has played a million, or I don't know how many millions, chess games in their lives.
I see.
So the information that these machines or these engines are fed is inhuman. Humans have to act on much less information, but we are so much better at making decisions based on this limited information and on extrapolating from it and on playing.
Right. Yeah.
So in that sense, I would say that humans are much better than machines at chess, because it's just that machines are able to do something that we're not able to do.
Right.
So that would be the equivalent of having 36 rackets all around, or 5 millions for that matter,
Right.
all around. You know what I mean?
Right. Like it's not really a fair comparison, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, we're not starting with the same hand.
Yeah, exactly.
So
It's kind of a handicap in a way. We can't do the things that they're doing.
Yeah, so that's why we get all excited about AI, but it's just such a different way of apprehending the world that it's really hard to measure what's easy and what's hard. In the 60s, they thought that voice recognition was going to be mastered in the next decade.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it wasn't, because it's just you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
There are the unknown unknowns, and you just don't know how easy or how hard a thing was. What did we talk about before we get to that? Because
What?
sorry, it feels like it's you interviewing me. I should shut up a bit more.
No. It's interesting. It's but what did we?
But I wanted to ask you. I mean, I think the answer is no, but I still want to ask you the question because it's kind of cool. Are you in any way related to the legendary house of Sforza from Renaissance Milan?
We don't know, really.
Oh, that's a cooler answer than I thought.
Yeah, we don't know. The family that does know that they're related, they've changed their name.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the most famous Sforza, Ludovico Sforza, which is actually my brother's name, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
But the historical figure, Ludovico Sforza, was not a nice dude.
No.
So it's not really a family we want to be related to. But I have dreamed about one day walking up to the castle and being like, it's mine now. You know? But I don't know. My dad jokes that we're the bastard children, possibly, of...
But you still have the name, though.
Yeah, we do. It's interesting, though, because as far as I know, my grandfather, he's Southern Italian.
Oh.
So very distant from Milan. So,
Mm.
so yeah, I mean, we haven't looked into it. I haven't done these like ancestry tests or anything. So
I mean, you would need to maybe go look at the city halls and all the, or in the churches. Maybe you could trace your. That's how you would trace your genealogy.
Right. Yeah.
But
yeah.
when you're rich and famous, you can hire a genealogist who will do this job for you.
Exactly.
And then you can be a successful singer-songwriter and a prince at the same time.
That would be sick.
That would sound good.
Duke
Yeah,
Sforza.
Duke. Wow, that would be cool. Do you know if there was a historical Gabriele Sforza?
There was.
There must have been.
Yeah, and Gabriele is not. I don't know about back then, but it's a pretty common name.
Yeah.
In Italy, but for the life of me, I can't remember what he did. So.
But was he a nicer guy than Ludovico, or?
I want to say he was a scholar of.
Oh,
sorts.
that's good.
Yeah, I think so. I could be. This is gonna be where you have your bling, and then
Okay, but that's
explain
gonna
where I was wrong. But
that's gonna when I'm gonna do some segue magic.
Yeah,
Because you yourself are kind of a scholar, Mr. Sforza. Yeah, you've studied. I remember we had a conversation about you studying in the UK, in Nottingham, and you studied art history, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You remember this late night conversation
When was this?
at your former place?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I tend to go back there.
And you were telling me about this statue. Oh, I forgot which one it is. That was one of your favorites. I think it's Zeus. Oh no, it's another god, starting with an L.
Oh yeah, not a god. He was a priest, Laocoön.
Oh yeah.
In Italian, anyways.
Okay.
But it's part of. I think, as far as we know, at the moment, it seems like we don't know who the original artist was. But
okay. I thought it was credited to someone.
No, it was. It's in the Vatican. It was one of the statues that inspired Michelangelo.
Oh, okay. I thought it was one of his.
Yeah, well, you can see like the inspiration, like from it.
Very smooth.
Yeah.
I mean, in many senses.
Yeah.
In every sense of the term.
Very smooth.
Smooth.
But yeah, I loved that statue. It's a depiction of this priest from the story of from the Iliad.
Yeah. But so he was father to a god or demigod, right? Is it the father of Achilles? No.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I would have to double check that.
He was, from the story that I know, is that he was a priest of one of the gods. It might have been Herr or something. But when the Greeks brought the horse as a gift, he was the one that warned people of Troy.
Oh.
That you shouldn't do this.
Oh, he was the one guy.
But the gods wanted the war to happen, so they punished him and sent, I think Poseidon sent sea serpents to kill him. And
that's never good.
And that is the statue is him and his two sons getting attacked by sea snakes.
Oh, I didn't know it was that dramatic.
Yeah, it's pretty gruesome, but like I think what Michelangelo loved about it, and you can see it, but it's just like the body of the priest is just so contorted, like you can see the anguish in his, just the way his posture is.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that Michelangelo really, I don't know exactly how to put it, but that was what he endeavored to do through his statues, his depiction of people. It was like the motion of the soul through the body. That was his
that makes
sort
sense.
of mantra.
So it's hyper real in a way.
Yeah.
Because I mean, for example, the David doesn't have human proportions, but it feels more human than human.
Right. Yeah.
You know this song? There's a song called "More Human Than Human."
No, I don't know that song.
No, it's like a white zombie song. It's like 90s industrial metal.
Oh, okay.
But it's pretty famous. I mean, anyways. But yeah. I mean, that is so interesting.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I was asking you. You studied also in Italy. Did you start your studies? How far did you go, by the way? With these like
before university,
art history studies.
Oh, my art history studies. I did the full 3 years.
Okay, so you got a bachelor's.
Yeah. Yeah. Admittedly, it was kind of strange because my fascination with art history kind of lay in Renaissance art, and borderline it became. I think I was interested in like art history / archaeology. Like I loved looking at Mesopotamian structures and stuff. Yeah. But when I got to university, it was all focused on modern, like contemporary art.
Oh.
And 90% of it was. There were a few Renaissance art classes.
But like 20th century art or?
Yeah, 20th century art. Which I wasn't familiar with, and I didn't have much of a fascination towards at the time. In a sense, like, my preference lies with something more classical art.
Yeah.
But I guess like the reason for the school doing that was because when you go to study art history, the things you can do as a profession is be a teacher or write books, and there's so many books written on classic art, so I think that's why they focus their curriculum on contemporary.
That is it's a saturated field kind of.
Yeah.
But I can understand that it would be interesting because Renaissance art is you have one foot in like in the new and one in like paying your respects to, I mean, the antiquity.
Yeah, for sure. And it was just, I don't know, I guess Renaissance, the Renaissance period was just like there was like an explosion of talent there in Tuscany, in Italy, you know.
Yeah, some weird combinations of talents. It's quite like I mean, I don't know. I feel like we always had polymaths in every century. But they were really recognized for the first time, maybe for what they were, and it's really a period that is fascinating to me, especially with this podcast.
Yeah.
Because this podcast is about pluridisciplinarity and how it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Because we feel this. I mean, I don't know. I feel like in general, we have this idea that people have to be super focused on one narrow domain.
Yeah. Which is an idea I've definitely been kind of a victim of in
Oh,
the
yeah.
past, where I felt like I have to be like one thing, you know.
How so?
I'm just like I guess, for example, with music, I have lots of other, you know, interests. Like I've never done this, but I actually really love carpentry
Mm-hmm.
and stuff. I love gardening. I just realized,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
yeah,
I didn't know that.
yeah. There was a time when I was considering going to study to be like a professional gardener, but
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense if you're, because it's art. I mean, it has kind of been, it is not as valued as it used to be.
yeah,
But like, for example, if you go to Versailles, the three names that you remember
uh-huh.
or that you're supposed to remember, because I forgot them, is the
Yeah.
architect, the gardener, and the cook or whatever.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I know Lebrun, I think, was the name. Was it the name of the gardener? I would have to double check that. I put a little footnote there. But yeah, it's an art form that has been
yeah,
like, we don't really think about it.
yeah, it's true. That's true, and I don't know. The other part of it, I think, is just like I just like being with nature and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
know? But
Are you more of a classical gardener or a romantic gardener? Trick question.
What do you mean?
No, but you know, do you like it like Versailles style? Everything, there is not one leaf that sticks out. It's all perfect, like man over nature. We're gonna shape you, and you better accept. Or more romantic, like romantic poetries, emotion, Goethe vibes, and like there is more of this like kind of emulation of nature. And
yeah, I would.
Deus in natura, and we let nature be our guide or whatever.
Yeah, I think I would lean towards the latter. Classic, I guess. It's good to let nature do its thing at some point and be wild.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's also impossible
Right.
to completely keep it from doing its thing, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, well, because I guess we impose a selection pressure on everything
Yeah,
inadvertently.
that is an interesting subject to go into.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah.
I was wondering if, because you were talking about, I mean, art doesn't happen in a vacuum. And you were mentioning studying modern art.
Mhm.
And when you study that, you cannot avoid but think about like the art business and how it's shaped and how it evolved over the years. Maybe at first with unknown art, and then patrons, like rich patrons, and then it evolved into, and then intellectual property came around and stuff.
Right.
And I wonder if you have any thoughts about this whole, the way, or maybe if you have thoughts about the way things work out right now in terms of the environment, economic and political, in which art is created.
I don't know. In terms of, I don't know how good of an answer I can give this, but I feel like I'm not a very business oriented person, so this might be difficult for me to answer. But I think, like the way that prices are put on contemporary art
Yeah.
is kind of bizarre to me.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't even-
it is quite
Yeah.
I mean, there is this idea, and I don't really know what to do with it, because, for example, talking about architecture, where it's really obvious, like you talk to architects, and it really seems like the field is better than it's ever been, and it's and people have new ideas. We have all these new materials we can work with.
Yeah.
We can do things that were never done before.
Yeah.
Like, for example, Jean Nouvel is a super famous French architect who has been doing incredible stuff, very controversial as well, because every good architect is a controversial one.
Right.
But yet we have this feeling that our cities are getting uglier by the day.
Yeah.
I wonder what you think about that.
I don't know. I mean, could you repeat the last thing you said?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I mean, it's just this discrepancy between the idea that architecture and art in general is getting better and better, and yet there is this feeling that many people share that our cities are getting uglier, our music is getting.
Yeah, I think it might be like for architecture and stuff. That it might be like, there's a bigger focus on like utility maybe or something.
Cost effectiveness.
Yeah. In terms of music and like when there is no like other use than the art itself, you know, like architecture serves a certain purpose.
Yeah, it's true.
But with like music or sculptures and paintings, they stand alone. Yeah, fine arts stand alone. I mean, I think the industry, it just gets carried away by like whatever fad there is. And I think in contemporary art for a time from Duchamp, you know?
Yeah.
I think it was, what I saw was the fad was shock.
Yeah, the concept, like,
yeah,
concept matters more than what you get with it.
Exactly. And it's like and it depends so much on how people react to it.
Yeah.
And I think that was it, where like for me with contemporary art, it kind of, I feel like it got carried away by that movement where it was a lot more about that shock impact it gives people, and not so much about the craft.
Yeah.
And
then maybe it becomes that runaway process where artists are making art for artists that are supposed to shock other artists,
right.
And because it's not an applied art, it becomes disconnected from reality completely.
Yeah.
And so I feel like you're making a case, and I tend to agree with you, for applied art. And I would tie that right back to what you were saying at first, because you almost try to turn your music into applied art because you want to tell a story about something, about someone, to touch someone in a specific way.
Right.
Would that be a fair thing to say?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I'll be totally honest. I do feel very selfish in like in the process. It's definitely more about expressing it in a way that I feel is accurate to me.
Yeah.
You know, but I do care about, I guess what I'm saying is during the process, it's very much introspective, but once it's out there, yeah, for sure. I do want, like, I think a really nice thing that happened was when I wrote one of my songs. It's not up on anything at the moment, but it's called Stay, and it's a breakup love song.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get some, I played it at a gig.
Yeah.
And
did you play it at Bar Bobu?
No, I didn't. Okay. It was a bit similar to that song, but this guy came up to me afterwards, and he was like, I totally know that feeling, you know, like that story. It was something you could relate to, and that really does something.
Wow. When
it, you know, this thing that was very personal, and like I felt quite isolated in my creative process, and like there are other people, like it connects to people, you know.
It's amazing. It
is amazing.
It's a testament to the unicity of human experience. The fact that you can do something that is so personal and so unique, and somehow people, we were kind of talking about that with Chris as well, that, you know, you can be like so concentrated and putting so much pressure on yourself, and you turn something into a diamond, and then people can recognize themselves in it.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
That was a good one.
I wish I get a compliment like that one day.
Yeah, no, it was really, that was the only time somebody said that.
Yeah.
So it was like really, it was really something.
Yeah, that kind of makes me feel bad, I must say, because the thing is, I feel like being a musician and being a technician is kind of what we were talking about earlier. Because I think I have a preempted, when I was preparing for this podcast and when I was listening to everything, maybe I've been a bit too analytical and a bit too musician-minded.
Well,
and projecting on your music, because I've been like hearing a lot, you know, I've been asking you about the guitar and these things that I hear, but maybe that some normal person would not necessarily fixate on, but they would just hear the raw emotion.
Oh no, but I mean, I like hearing about that, because I do sometimes dig into, I get analytical too.
Yeah.
But I don't know, maybe right now I just I've been feeling like maybe I don't want to think about it so much and just kind of.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think there is many other ways to do.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Except if you can just mastermind and know how everybody's gonna feel about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, but
but it's like this thing we were saying about recognizing faces. There is something like a magic spark that happens there, and even like Paul Ekman, who has been theorizing microexpression, nobody can capture facial expressions, and nobody can capture, and that's the beauty of it, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you say that again? Because I want to figure out the.
No, I'm just
the
going
like.
There. I mean, in the sense that.
Go for it.
Sorry.
No, you shouldn't apologize. I can't.
No, that's funny. I just like my brain just like. No, but in the sense that when we try to capture what makes an Italian guy Italian in the way he behaves, and the only way we cannot theorize it, we just know it. It's like it's like the Supreme Court defense,
No, I totally get what you mean.
Pornography.
Yeah.
The pornography defense. I don't know if you ever heard about that.
No, I haven't heard about that.
Because of course pornography was forbidden by some law, and it was taken to the American Supreme Court. I forgot the name of the judge of the Supreme Court justice, but I will put him there. But yeah, he said, and they could not pinpoint what was pornography and what wasn't pornography. And so this guy just ended up saying, I know it when I see it.
Right.
And this is like in the 60s or 70s, and it's this like a super famous court case. I mean, Supreme Court case.
Oh, I didn't know that. I mean, I know the quote, like, you know it when you see it. I've definitely heard that.
Well, that's where it comes from, I guess.
The origin of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess that's, like, I'm drawing a connection to...
This little je-ne-sais-quoi.
Yeah, the je-ne-sais-quoi. But yeah, when I'm like... I was just thinking, like, when talking about the application of theory to music, or the importance of theory in as a musician or a songwriter, I do read comments. Like I'm in some like composer groups on Facebook, which are great, but a lot of times I do get this impression that people think like, okay, I'm gonna put a tritone here to create tension or something, but it's like that thing where you can't quite put your finger on like a person's expression.
Yeah.
When I'm writing, it's not like I don't express it. I'm not thinking in dialogue in my head. It's just like a feeling, and I want it to go to this chord, and it feels right, and that's all I have going for me. It's not a logical process, And so I think that je-ne-sais-quoi is always playing in the background when you're writing.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we already talked about that.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, for sure. I feel like maybe we also touched on it with Chris, but it is this tyranny of measurement in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Because theory is nice because if you don't look too closely at it, it's pretty straightforward, but it's not. But it looks straightforward, and it looks like, okay, you want to create this effect of tension, you use a dominant flat 9 chord. Bam, there.
Right.
And people like to think along these lines because it feels like this like emotion that you're trying to encode in a song so it can be decoded by someone. This is like so complex that it is functionally completely impossible to apprehend.
Yeah.
And so maybe it's a cop-out. It's a way to make yourself feel better. It's a way, I did that because there is like a 2-5-1 there. You know what I mean? Kind of stuff. So that's why it feels this way. But no, just makes the chord just change the BPM a little bit. Bam, it feels completely differently.
Yeah.
Just change the guitar to a synth, and all of a sudden it's completely different. So yeah, there is this thing that maybe that we're afraid to look in the eyes, like that we don't fucking know.
I think totally
how it works, and that's also the beauty of it.
I think exactly. I think there is totally this fear, like in a sense, like I feel like the process of songwriting is like free falling. You really don't know where you're going, and the more things you try to grab a hold on, like the harder it gets. You know.
And at the end, you crash on the ground.
or you find it, you can glide. You know.
Yeah.
But
if you have a wingsuit.
Yeah, exactly. You need to find the wingsuit on the way down. That's the game of songwriting.
Yeah.
Find that parachute. But I think, you know, like the thing you're talking about where I think, I don't know, maybe this is unfair to other people, but I that might like working very methodically when writing, but I think it is maybe we do that because, or we have a tendency to want to grab onto like theory that seems solid because then you have some sort of path, or you feel like you have some sort of path, but in reality songwriting is just like you don't know where up or down is. You know.
Oh wait, is that in a movie? I forgot if it's like some Alice in Wonderland quote or something.
Oh, I don't know.
But it feels like
maybe I just stole something. I don't know.
That's what it reminds me of, you know, like crawling in the rabbit hole and then falling and falling and falling. Like she does. And I think it's and down and down and down. And it feels like she's falling, but then she's falling for way too long. And I don't know, it somehow evokes this idea.
Yeah, totally.
I'd like to go in a kind of different direction.
Mm-hmm.
And to ask you if you can reminisce maybe on some of the art or movies or albums that have maybe shaped you growing up. And also, you were mentioning mythology and archaeology, and I wonder if that played a part in your development, like learning maybe about Roman or Greek or Nordic or Sumerian.
I don't know about like the art history stuff. Well, I think Michelangelo definitely was an inspiration in terms of like I don't know, I felt like the stuff we were talking about, like his philosophy on art, and you actually talked with Chris about the marble block.
Oh yeah,
right, where he's sitting there, like that kind of getting an insight into his mentality about art was like a huge inspiration to me. I felt like when I heard the motion of the soul through the body, I was like, that's fucking poetic, man.
Yeah.
And that really influenced me in terms of like, I don't know, maybe not necessarily the way I see myself as an artist, but like my relationship to art, I guess, maybe. In terms of like musical influences,
or just like in general art influences. Sorry, I asked you two questions that are completely unrelated, and I just put them packaged them together.
No, it's good.
Sorry, it's another tangent, but you know Ghibli movies.
Yeah.
Do you know them pretty well? You know Totoro?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you know Grave of the Fireflies?
Yes, I haven't seen that in ages, but yeah.
The traumatizing movie.
Yeah.
And Totoro is like this kid movie.
Yeah, exactly.
You know they used to package them together and sell them together?
I did not know that. That's hilarious.
So, man, I read that on the internet. I'm like, this is the most innocent Ghibli movie ever.
Yeah.
And then this is one of the most traumatizing things I ever saw on a screen, period.
Exactly. Yeah, I remember. Doesn't that...
And they did like a family package or something, like, you know.
That's hilarious. That is hilarious. But that might point to something about Japanese culture where, like, violence is not so much hidden from kids. Like there is violence in like animes and mangas, and like kids get a hold of it, and it's actually marketed towards like teenagers and stuff.
Such as, do you have like
of mangas?
Or is it something you've been confronted to when you were growing up in Tokyo?
No, it was just I just realized how, like, for example, like Marvel comics and stuff. Like I've never actually read them, but from my impression, they're pretty like PG. Yeah. You know, it's like POW and stuff. But they in some Japanese mangas, like, have you heard of JoJo's Bizarre Adventures?
Oh yeah, I wish my brother was there because he knows everything about that.
Oh, really? Well,
yeah,
I mean,
I'm the disgrace now. I should I should know a little bit more about that.
Oh, and little trivia. Like you know the art, like his style of drawing.
Who?
The author of JoJo's Bizarre Adventures. His style of drawing is pretty unique.
Okay.
You know, and he was actually really inspired by Michelangelo, and you can kind of see that in like the way like the characters are posed and stuff. But
are they standing like contrapposto?
Yeah,
style?
exactly.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh, maybe we could bring out some photos, but it's interesting.
I want to check it out now. I will tell that to my brother. I wonder if he knows.
Yeah. It's interesting.
But yeah, about violence. I mean, I can definitely relate to what you just said. I'd never thought about it along these lines, but it's true that if you read Spider-Man, and if you read Dragon Ball Z, pretty violent, and also that like Sangoku, I think at the beginning is supposed to be 14. That kid is twisted.
Yeah.
And there is always this like weird voyeur mentality.
Yeah.
Of like, you know, trying to look under girls' skirts.
Yeah.
And the heroine is called Bulma, which means underwear, right? Underpants in Japanese. Bulma in Dragon Ball Z.
I've never heard that, but I think you might be right. I just don't know that.
And her son is called Trunks.
Right.
And they have thematic names like this.
Yeah, they do.
Like the science are named after food.
Yeah.
I mean,
Gohan.
What?
Gohan.
Yeah, it's like a meal, right?
Yeah, it means meal.
Yeah, but then there is they all come from the planet Vegeta, so it's vegetable.
Oh right, I actually didn't even.
Yeah, and Sangoku's Saiyan name is Kakarot, which is a carrot.
Right.
And his brother's name is Reddit, which is a radish.
Oh
Am I blowing your mind right now?
Yeah, I just like took those names at like face
value. Me too. And like Kakarot, I didn't know it was like the Japanese way of saying carrot or something.
Oh, wow.
And then there is his dad, I don't know, but I know that, what was it, Napa?
Napa, yeah.
It's like a Japanese vegetable as well.
Napa, yeah. Oh my god, you're blowing my mind.
Yeah, am I?
That's hilarious.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, man. So if you're not inspired, you need character names like this. You're writing a book, like, just pick a subject, bam, planet Vegeta, and bam.
Nice, hilarious.
But it's true that, I mean, I never thought about it this way, but it's true that the Japanese culture seems to be very different in that regard.
Yeah, it's not... Yeah, that kind of stuff's not really censored much. And I have no idea why that is, to be totally honest.
That is curious. I have such a low resolution picture of Japanese society, and I cannot really reconcile it in my mind, the super polite, super ritual based society, and this like voyeur and crazy hentai vibe, where like Japanese people have the craziest ideas, which that's why they make crazy, super interesting stories, but at the same time,
well, I mean, I think it's one of these things, like it is in general, it is a much more reserved sort of society in terms of like what is accepted in terms of behavior and stuff. And I think it was just that was the outlet, you know. I think Hayao Miyazaki, the director, writer, I think he kind of, to me, he stands out in terms of like the Japanese animators, you know. I find his movies are so profound. And
the poetry is
yeah, and I feel like I might damage my reputation saying this, but one of my favorites of his is Kiki's Delivery Service. Like, I loved it when I was a kid. Yeah. And I rewatched it the other day for like nostalgia. And I was like, man, this, like, it's a coming of age story for people who don't know. But it's like in a fantasy world where the main character is a witch, right? And she's 13, in
Denmark or Norway or Sweden.
Yeah, I don't know if they ever explicitly.
I think they dropped some little like things here and there so you could identify.
Right.
Sure. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, But yeah, but I just felt like that depiction of like the coming of age story was just like, it just felt so real, like in a way that that I don't feel is captured in like Disney movies or something.
Yeah, I agree.
There was one thing, this one scene I love, like usually in coming of age movies, like when you have like the awkward kid, right? That's usually the protagonist.
Yeah.
And usually it's they address things like how they might get picked on or something. They stand out and they get picked on from the other kids, and they have to deal with that. But there's this scene in this, like in this movie, there's this part where it's like the opposite. It's like she's so incredibly insecure, and she sees all these girls who have pretty dresses and stuff, and she's convinced like they're judging her. And she gets all moody and like leaves her friend. But it cuts to the conversation the girl's having, and they actually are inspired by her. And so that's something that like I can relate to, and I can still relate to when I project. I have like my imaginations of what people are thinking of me.
Maybe the chameleon thing.
Yeah, and it's actually a lot of times we just make this up in our head.
Yeah.
And like kids go through that, and I thought that was really cool that he put that in there. That was like a kind of different part of the struggle.
And it's also a really healing choice, maybe.
Yeah.
And the music has to be mentioned because Joe Hisaishi.
Yeah, I thought we'd go there. Yeah.
Wow, man, I fell in love with every one of his soundtracks.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And then I got tickets to see him in Paris.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. And I was just sitting through 2 hours of an orchestra butchering his songs on the stage. So that was really painful.
Oh, damn, really?
That was one of the biggest disappointments ever.
Oh, shit.
And I felt bad for him.
Wait, was he there? Or?
Yeah, he was there.
Oh, okay.
And he was directing this French orchestra. And yeah, and I mean, sorry for the bad vibes, but man, I was so annoyed. I was like, he must feel so bad. These guys are just butchering his repertoire. And then, so there was Princess Mononoke.
Yeah.
And as far as I'm concerned, you don't touch Princess Mononoke. It's my favorite, probably with Spirited Away.
Yeah.
Wow. And then, oh man, and so they start playing my favorite theme, or one of my favorites is like The Legend of Ashitaka.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? The guy just like close to me, he just starts humming. I wanted to punch him in the face. At the exact moment, he murdered my vibe. He like took it, killed it, and stepped on it. That's how I felt like. That was horrible. So I just took my stuff, and I was looking like, and I just moved like 5 seats on the right side.
That's hilarious.
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
I guess that's just a testament to how much you love the music.
Oh, yeah. I mean, but then, and I felt bad for him. His music is so great.
Yeah, that is a bummer. I've been listening to his stuff on repeat pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, he's a super inspiring composer.
Yeah. I think we started on influences, and he's been a huge influence in terms of like trying to get into the scoring for media, right? Like he's definitely on the top of the list. Danny Elfman is another one. Do you know Danny Elfman?
No.
Do you know The Nightmare Before Christmas?
The Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Hoffman. Yeah. The guy, he did like most of the Tim Burton movies.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Actually, I heard of him recently. It's funny that you would mention that.
Yeah, he's I
didn't know the name, but
yeah. His recent stuff hasn't been standing out that much, but like Nightmare Before Christmas is brilliant. Edward Scissorhands. He creates this mood that's just Danny Elfman, And nobody else has that.
Yeah.
And there was one other person.
Yeah, I have one, definitely. I wonder if you're going to cite him. No. I mean, tell me who you are inspired by, like your movie composers.
Yeah. Oh, Ennio Morricone.
Oh, yeah. That's a classic.
Yeah.
Spaghetti westerns all the way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he's also, this is an interesting thing because as I've been trying to kind of get better at scoring, like I notice things that I'm not doing so well when I'm writing to film. Like the most common problem I think is that your music stands out too much, and it's gone beyond supporting the picture. You know?
It's like stealing the show.
Yeah, but like, and I felt like nowadays, I think most scores nowadays tend to be like more underscores, or like it doesn't have like a specific like theme or something.
That's a very nice pun. I mean, you know, they're in the score.
Right.
Anyways, I mean, it's a way of like, I should shut up. Sorry, please continue talking. But yeah, it's like serving, it's just intensifying what you see on the screen.
Yeah. But then you have these, I just started thinking about artists like composers like Ennio Morricone, who have like very specific themes, like the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
Like everybody knows.
Wow.
Yeah. Thank you for finishing that.
Yeah, I had to.
But you know, and I just thought like he's an example of one of these composers who can, I don't know, take care of the part of himself that's an artist and support a film as well, you know. But I don't know if it's also just the reason it's become more subtle underscores lately is whether that's just the thing that directors are looking for these days.
I mean, these days I noticed that soundscaping and music making are really merging.
Yeah.
So there was this this guy who lived in Berlin. Now he's dead, so rest in peace. I forgot his name. I'm gonna link him, but he's an Icelandic composer. I think he's Johansson or something. I have to, and he did the music for Arrival by Denis Villeneuve. I don't know if you heard of that.
Arrival, the film.
Did you see it?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And it's from a Japanese science fiction writer. The original story.
Oh, no way. I didn't know that. Okay. But I watched this movie ages ago. I don't remember.
Oh, it's amazing. It's like crossover between sci-fi and linguistics. And then the music in the movie, I think he got a Grammy for that, or he got like some kind of award, or maybe an Oscar. Because he finds a way to, so this movie, no spoiler, is about extraterrestrial beings communicating in a pretty unique language, and he found a way to make the music reflect the language, and sometimes you almost feel like that's what you hear, and it turns out that that language plays a pivotal part in the movie. It's fantastic.
Interesting. Do you mean like he kind of put like a motif to it, or is it just like a sound that he created?
It's like soundscaping. It's like very low rumbling, and it's and more in like scores you see orchestras, of course, because that's like kind of a trademark, and I would be so sad if we got rid of that.
Yeah.
But also soundscaping, and you know, like every trailer has like the trailer voice in a world, and then there is this like super low rumbling sound, you know, stuff like that.
The classic drone, the bass drone.
Yeah, the pedal, like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
The back technique, like.
Yeah, and I like that stuff too. You know, I think there's definitely room for that. But like you said, I think it would be sad if the orchestra completely disappeared.
Yeah.
From that. Discipline.
Yeah. When you mentioned Daniel Hoffman, was it?
Danny Elfman. Elf. Like
Elfman.
Yeah.
Okay. It made me think immediately of my personal favorite, who's Howard Shore. Because I saw a movie. It was like maybe A Life of Violence. I would have to double check the title, but it's a Cronenberg movie, and it's with Viggo Mortensen.
Okay.
I didn't know he was scoring like all the Cronenberg movies. I didn't know it was him, and I just watched The Lord of the Rings way too many times. And when I heard this soundtrack, I was like, "Bam! It's Howard Shore. I know it. I know it's him."
Oh yeah.
And I looked it up, and bam, here it was, Howard Shore. And this guy is, man, blowing me away. I'm reading a thesis that was written on his music in The Lord of the Rings by a guy called Doug Adams. And the way he develops every motif is insane. It's like never It's next level. I mean, I don't know enough about but yeah, motifs are intertwined, and they are leitmotifs that are there all the time in a Wagnerian. I mean, it's like a Wagner kind of thing, but they are intertwined, played with different orchestrations. So, for example, the Fellowship of the Ring theme, pom 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 pom.
Yeah.
It's because the Fellowship throughout the first movie breaks up.
Right.
And so it's played with different orchestrations, and different instruments symbolize different characters. So, for example, when they're on the rivers, and that's when the hobbits part way with the party, like the orchestration is different.
Yeah, I love that.
Sorry, we were cut there. Just the other thing I was going to mention about the Lord of the Rings soundtrack is that, can you remember the first sound, exactly the first thing that comes on in the movies? The first thing that we hear at the very opening of the Lord of the Rings. It's a trick question. Because you would think is the theme of the ring, right? So that goes bum bum ba da ba da ba bum.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, that's the Phrygian thing.
Ah, okay.
That's a Phrygian thing. But before that, the person who is introducing the story, a bit like in Dune, is like you have a woman standing, and that's Galadriel. And Galadriel is from Lothlorien, that's the name of where the forest elves reside.
Their little sanctuary.
And so you hear faintly the theme of the Lothlorien when she's there.
No way.
When she's opening. Yeah. And that's kind of what we were talking about, is so methodical, because it's so creative.
Yeah.
And at the same time, and the harmony in this is insane, because Howard Shore played jazz. He was like a jazz player. And the way he incorporates crunchy jazz harmony with like orchestral instrumentation, it makes it like it's like the best of both worlds. It is so amazing.
You'll have to send me this guy.
Oh yeah, I mean, actually, Nerd Writer? He does like video essays on Facebook, on YouTube, and he did like a short one on this. But that's an entire book. Like there's a guy that went through all the scores, but yeah, I think that might interest you as a
for
a guy that wants to write movie music. Okay, before we end, we have one last subject we kept the best for last that we didn't go into, and that I thought would be the bread and butter of our conversation, like the biggest part would be meditation, because I know that you meditate.
Yeah, I've actually I picked it back up again, but I took a bit of a break for some time.
So what kind of meditation do you do?
I guess the way I learned it was from a teacher who studied meditation with Soto Zen temple. So it's a Japanese name, Shikantaza, and
that's the name of the discipline.
That's the name of the
temple.
No, the practice, the meditation.
Okay.
And it literally means just sitting. And it's kind of, I think it's just pretty similar to open awareness that I think some people who do Vipassana, I think they talk about that too. Yeah,
that's what I do. I mean, humbly, I'm a terrible meditator, but I try to do it. And so it's similar, you say?
Yeah, well, it's with Shikantaza, there's just, they really focus on the idea of just sitting and not, like, no intention whatsoever, no focus, and just open. So I did that for about 2 years.
Okay, so on a weekly basis, or how did that?
Every day, 20 minutes.
Okay.
So.
But your teacher, you said, how did that? Did you have lessons, or did you meet up with him? So
yeah, I call him my teacher because he pretty much was, but it was actually, I was using an app called 10% Happier.
Oh, okay. Right? Yeah.
And they assign an actual coach to you.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, they do.
Is it the one for Mr. Harris, but the other one?
Yeah, Dan Harris. Yeah, and the
Confusing.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I use Sam Harris's app.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, waking up.
Yeah, I actually just downloaded that, so I'm interested to kind of take a
It's
peek.
really nice.
But yeah, so this teacher I found he was assigned to me, and then but I actually, to be totally honest, I struggled a lot with. I still struggle. I have this one thing that is kind of bugging me in my meditation, which is I get tension headaches.
Tension headaches.
Yeah.
What's that?
It's like you feel like a band of pressure on your head.
Oh.
And it's not like a pounding headache or anything,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just this, pressure
Okay.
in your head. But
If you meditate for too long, or?
yeah, it just seems to be like, I don't know, I'm exerting too much effort or something. It's been hard to kind of figure it out, and my teacher he was really patient with me, but he had a hard time kind of helping me out with that. So
I mean, it's a bit disqualifying if you're a meditation teacher, you get pissed off at your student.
Right, exactly. Which I have had one person who totally gave up on me.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. That was super discouraging. I won't say the name of his...
On the app?
No. This was after the app. I moved on. I found this like online... it was basically a forum, but it was set up by somebody who had a temple in Japan.
Oh.
So he was an actual like priest.
Okay.
And he just wanted to extend his teachings globally. And it was nice to have a forum where you could discuss stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
So you were like really into it.
Yeah, I was. And this was a Soto Zen forum, but since I just kind of went in there because Shikantaza was suggested to me, and so I thought I might check out this Soto Zen thing, but in the end, it just wasn't my thing.
Because of the headaches?
No, it was more, I'm not religious.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And there was like a bit of a religious undertone to
Yeah. That's what I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah.
That's why I like Sam Harris.
Exactly. Yeah.
Have you read Waking Up, the book?
No.
Oh man, you're gonna love it.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly. I mean, the undertitle is a guide to spirituality without religion.
Right.
And that's kind of what he is crusading against.
Exactly.
To choose the worst word possible.
Yeah. No, but yeah, and totally. So yeah, you said you've been using the app.
Yeah. And but yeah, he's been dissociating meditation from the whole, because I was gonna joke that maybe these pains, that's your third eye opening, Gaby.
I know, man. You have no idea how many times I've read that.
Or your pineal gland is just inflamed, and it's like you are in communication channeling some ancient deity.
Exactly. I don't know. I think some people talk about how like you have like
you're a
at
wizard,
the bottom
Gaby.
of your spine.
Oh
There's
yeah,
like
Kundalini.
Kundalini. And you're awakening like a dragon or something. I don't know. But yeah, so I'm not into that stuff.
Awakening the dragon. Oh, it's kind of cool. You have to admit, like, the Kundalini chakra in the sacrum.
Yeah.
If you can unwind it, you have like unlimited power, and you can have sex for 4 hours.
But
yeah, that's kind of the whole thing, right?
Is that it?
I think it's part of it.
Right,
I would have asked. I don't want to parody. I don't want to how do you say? To caricature the culture. So I mean, yeah, I don't want to offend anybody, so I might be wrong there, but I definitely heard of Kundalini yoga, and there is like and it's interesting because it's like this thing where you have practices that are proven to be so healthy, but yet they rely on false basis.
Yeah,
it would be as if like the Finnish had like some kind of sauna goddess. You know, where they would be worshipping in the sauna.
Yeah.
But they don't. It's just that we know it's so good for your heart.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah.
So that was the problem.
Yeah, that was the problem. It wasn't... I don't know. Everything, all like the feedback had this religious undertone to it.
Like what, for example?
They're big on like I feel like I hope I'm, for people who are actually Soto Zen, I hope I'm not misrepresenting, but to me the big emphasis seemed to be like being one with the universe.
Yeah.
And stuff. And I can't remember specific examples of the feedback I got, but it just wasn't quite clicking. I just felt like they were looking at it from a very different perspective, and I wasn't really helping me.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think you would really enjoy that book because he really had to struggle with the same kind of problems, and he talks about it when he went on retreats in like Nepal and stuff. And there is this whole, apparently I don't know much about that subject, unfortunately, but there is like this dichotomy between the idea that you have a satori at some point, like you know, progressive, versus like you have one point where bam, you're awakened, you know.
Yeah.
You have this like one occurrence that you're like chasing after, and or it's like a process, which is, of course, I mean, not of course, which is in my opinion the way to think about it, because in meditation, if you're attached to any outcome, you're basically, I mean, you're like you're not going anywhere.
Yeah. And I guess I should say for the Soto Zen, maybe it wasn't so much that they were making like spiritual claims or anything. It was more just, I felt a subtle sense of like dogma in there.
Yeah.
Where it was like a repetition of certain ideas and you don't question it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a bad sign.
Yeah. So bummer.
Yeah, that's a shame. But I mean, it's good if you found another way. And it seems like there's something to it. Because I know the guy from Twitter, Jake Dorsey.
Yeah.
Or there is also Yuval Noah Harari. You know, the guy who wrote Sapiens and Homo Deus. That guy who is like a Israeli historian. He got very famous. And he also practices Vipassana every day, like 4 hours. And so there seems to be this like this renaissance of meditation, and people really it seems to spread again, and the benefits are pretty.
Yeah. And I think and yeah, that's totally true, and there's a larger awareness of like the benefits of it, but I think this is one thing that Sam Harris talks about sometimes, or I think this was in the app that he actually said this in like the intro episode or recording, but like there are health benefits and stuff, but there's like something else.
Yeah.
Like he wants to emphasize that it's not, I guess his phrase is an executive stress ball. Yeah. And he doesn't
I wanted to talk about that actually.
Yeah.
He made a metaphor that makes that super clear for me.
Oh yeah.
About reading. It's like, there are benefits to reading. Like you know more about the world, maybe you have a longer, I mean, you can concentrate for longer, you learn new words, blah blah blah. But if you do it because you enjoy reading.
Yeah.
That's why, that's how it becomes, it's something that you can do in the long run, is because you are enthralled by the story and you want to learn further. It's not because you have some cognitive benefits down the road.
Yeah. I mean, I'm curious, like what how long have you been meditating for?
Well, it's I mean, I don't want to, but I've been meditating since the app came out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. So I don't know, we are in December 2019, so I think it's been about a year, maybe a bit over a year. Yeah. But yeah, I really like it because they are like 50 meditations that you do, and then you have daily meditations, but you also have like he has, because his podcast now is much more political than it used to be. It's all about like, political problems, and it's very some like negative vibes. I mean, I think a lot of it needs to be addressed, about social media, about like what's happening in America and stuff. But actually, the whole meditation talks, they're on the app. So on the app, he has talks with like meditation teachers of very different fields, and it is so interesting. He had one with Mr. Irvine, I forgot his name, about Stoicism, and I love Stoicism.
Yeah.
I'm really, really interested in it. So interesting. I would really recommend it for that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that the Stoicism kind of overlaps with kind of what people have understood about the mind through meditation.
Yeah.
Or like the lessons they've
absolutely. I feel that's the closest the West got.
Yeah.
Because it's all the focus on the an internal locus instead of looking outside.
Yeah.
Stoicism, like if you read the Meditations by Marcus Aurelius.
That's on my to read list.
I read it, which was written in Greek, by the way, for some weird reason. He was a Roman emperor, but he wrote it in Koine Greek. I was like,
bizarre.
Yeah, that's like a trivia question for a Trivial Pursuit, you know?
Yeah.
That's like a trick question.
That's really weird.
I don't know why he did that, but I read it. I was like, what? Anyways.
Yeah.
And he wrote it for himself. It was not supposed to be published or anything, but he always brings it back to himself. He always he never defines how he feels based on like what happens outside.
Right.
So it's very similar in many ways. Very, very interesting.
Yeah.
But what you were talking about and what becomes more and more criticized is like meditation becomes a postmodern tool, and you have like little meditation and yoga sessions in companies.
Yeah.
And many people are criticizing it on the grounds of cultural appropriation.
Yeah.
Which I'm not really qualified to. I mean, I tend to agree to some extent and to disagree to some other extent, but it's more like it's like a band-aid that you put, and if you live in a pathological society, Krishnamurti said like it's not a sign of good health to be adapted to a pathological society, or he said something along these lines. And so it's just a band-aid. It's like, I mean, your life is drudgery, but meditate for 10 minutes, you'll feel better.
Yeah, it to me, like the way I see it is like it's starting to become a consumer product.
Yeah.
You know. Which I mean you get something out of it and you enjoy it. That's great. But
that's what it was criticizing. Like, I'll meditate 10 minutes and then bam, I'll go do my, I don't know, like go negotiate this contract and stuff.
I think at the beginning, when you're first starting out, I think it's possible to experience a bit of like a placebo effect where you've sat down for 10 minutes, you meditated, and then you're like, oh, I fucking feel great. And but it's not always that way, right? Like meditation doesn't. I think one of the hardest truths to kind of accept is that meditation isn't always pleasant.
Yeah.
You know, have you encountered?
It's like working out.
Yeah.
Some days you want to do it. Some days it's the last thing you want to do. Meditation, some days you manage to be incredibly focused.
Right.
And most of the time for me, it's just like I'm thinking about all these things. I mean, my brain is weird already. But it's like, it's just a tornado of things. But if you manage to, I mean, the first time I meditated, I was like, I suck at this. I mean, like it's like, because I thought I would just stop thinking, you know.
I had to laugh. I thought it was hilarious how...
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, because I was literally like... I remember going like 1 and then like off. And then I'd be like, oh my God, I totally forgot about it. It was amazing to see that.
Counting.
I started off counting the breath.
Yeah.
And that made it very apparent like what number you got to. It just, so maybe if it wasn't clear, it was like my first year I was following the breath. That was of meditation. But yeah, I just thought it was hilarious.
It's crazy. It's like in your blind spot.
Yeah.
You think it's easy. It's like to stop walking. I just have to stand still. No.
Well, yeah. I mean, that kind of stuff. I don't know about you, but for me, like a big pull towards meditation was, I actually didn't really buy it when I first started. I just kind of did it because it was suggested.
Yeah.
But it is strange, like the nature of your mind. Like we really think we know it, but when you consider that you've sat down, let's say it's just 10 minutes, and you have a conscious intention to follow the breath, and your mind just keeps going off to places, it's bizarre to me that's
So strange.
that happens. And one thing was I remember.
Yeah, it's crazy that there is this elephant hidden in plain sight just in front of you, and that we just live our lives without even seeing it.
Yeah. I mean, just consider the fact that sometimes, like, on your way to work, like, how much of the way do you remember, really?
Yeah.
You know? But you ended up at work. That's fucking weird.
Autopilot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Experiencing self versus remembered self.
Yeah, right.
That's
right.
a Kahneman. You know him?
Oh, was it Kahneman?
Daniel Kahneman.
Daniel Kahneman, okay.
Yeah, I mean, and Amos Tversky, they did some research on it.
Okay.
It was in Thinking Fast and Slow, that book. They got the pseudo-nobel prize in economics.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I say pseudo-nobel prize because I have a... I don't really like the Nobel Prize in economics.
Right.
Because it's kind of a bullshit prize.
I see.
Yeah, because, anyways, I don't know. I'm going to repeat this every podcast. I don't think I mentioned it last time.
No, I don't think so.
Oh, I did, but we did not record that part. But actually, the Nobel Prize in economics. So there was this guy, Alfred Nobel, and he invented dynamite, which is great.
Okay.
Great, very useful. But he did not want his name to be forever associated with dynamite. So he created a Nobel Prize. And that's now how we know it, like Nobel. Back in the day.
Okay.
And they have some of them, so it's a bit complicated, but there is the Literature Prize, the Nobel Peace Prize, there is the prize in physics, and they are given to you by the king of Norway or Sweden, like usually it's Sweden, in different combinations. And then there is the equivalent of Norway for mathematics, which is the Abel Prize, which is the most, the best distinction you can get as a mathematician. Many people think it's the Fields Medal, but you have to be under 40 to get the Fields Medal. But actually, the Abel Prize is really for the Fields Medal the Abel Prize is for a body of work, or like it's usually you have it when you're older. But what they did, there was no economic peace prize, and the King's Bank recently created a prize in the memory of Mr. Nobel as a homage to him. So they could call it the Nobel Prize in Economics. So they are just like writing on the back of the Nobel Peace Prizes, even though, and that's why an economics is not a science. I mean, you can say it's a science. There's an argument to be had about that. It's not a science like mathematics or physics or biology are sciences.
Yeah.
It is much more subject to interpretation, and it's much harder to disprove or prove a hypothesis. I mean, technically it's impossible in terms of in epistemological terms, but it's just like, you have so many factors. Like if you have to analyze like why atoms move in a certain way, it's already hard. But like if you have to analyze why like you have inflation in that country over that period, and it can be anything and everything.
The amount of factors that are involved
are
impossible
to compute.
Yeah.
But sorry, went on a tangent there, but I always have to, because I feel like, that is such a way of lying to people.
Yeah.
Because you tell them, oh, Nobel Prize, but no, it's not. I mean, it is kind of a cheat. So, yeah.
I see what you're saying, yeah.
Sorry,
I didn't know that.
Sorry for the tangent, but
no.
But yeah, so we were talking about meditation. Yeah, it's crazy. I think that it's another specious comparison. But I feel like when there is self-reference, weird things start to happen. Like, there's a bunch of paradoxes. Like there is, of course, Zenon's arrow, like the arrow that goes, you shoot an arrow, there is an archer shooting an arrow to trying to hit a mark, and then the arrow goes like half the distance, and then it goes half the distance, and then half the distance, and then half the distance, and then it never reaches. And there is another example of self-reference, and I'm really passionate about this because I love Douglas Hofstadter, and he talks a lot about this in his different books. Another example is like, this phrase is false, and if it's true, it's false, and vice versa. So it's like, another example, and you'll see where I'm going with this in a second. Another one, that there is the barber's paradox. Like, so you have a town, and you have a barber, one barber in the town. And there is this rule: everybody every man either shaves himself or is shaven by the barber. No exceptions. But then who shaves the barber? Mind blown. No, and where I'm going with this is that when you're meditating, it's a form of metacognition. So you're actually thinking about thinking.
Yeah.
It's like a loop, an endless loop in a computer program.
Yeah.
It goes haywire. Weird things start to happen when we think about how we think. Because it's like a hole of mirrors, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I totally know what you mean. And you can drive yourself nuts thinking about the nature of that. Like, it's like there's... I mean, I guess the way I kind of look at it, when I think about that, I think about how the question of, like, where am I in my consciousness?
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Are you behind your eyes or...
Yeah,
that
or...
stuff?
Not necessarily that, but like the watcher, like the
oh yeah,
you know,
the one who experiences and the one who judges.
Yeah, because a lot of times I feel like I'm observing, but I have this really strong relation to my thoughts.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then eventually later I might have this experience. No, that was just thinking. You know what I mean? So like, how many layers do you go down? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's like an Inception. We have to go deeper.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
But it is such a freeing thought.
Mm-hmm.
The day I realized that, it was just reading Eckhart Tolle. You know Eckhart Tolle?
Yeah.
I just like, a friend of mine gave me his book, and there was just this phrase, "You are not your thoughts." And when I realized that, my life changed. I mean, not in a big way.
Yeah.
But it felt like it's just this simple idea.
Yeah.
But not the idea, the realization that you are not your thoughts. That is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
When you've been associated with the self for your whole life.
Yeah. But you know what I find even crazier, maybe funnier, in maybe a sad way, is like knowing that, like, for all intents and purposes, when I'm sitting down and meditating, it's apparent that I'm not my thoughts, and I'm definitely not making them. Like the subjective me, I'm not making them.
Yeah. So I am. Oh no, sorry. I think, therefore I am. Completely false.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's not so obvious that you are the one doing the thinking.
Yeah.
And what is I, anyways?
Yeah, $1 million question.
That's Nietzsche. Like, he just like took the phrase from Descartes, and everybody was like, "Yeah, that is the ground truth." You know, cogito ergo sum. And Nietzsche went like, "Nope, bullshit."
Yeah. I mean, it was pretty good. I guess it was a good start.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty insane that he managed to like break it down this far.
Yeah.
Yeah, to imagine that reality. And he, Nick Bostrom and the simulation hypothesis, that we live in a computer simulation.
Yeah.
He saw that. Because he was like, maybe reality is just a veil in front of your eyes, put there by a malingénie, by a devil, some kind of devil.
Yeah.
Evil genius. I mean, evil genius in the Latin sense, you know.
Right.
And he saw that, so that's pretty crazy. But no, René, it goes way deeper than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy to think about it.
Yeah, but don't you think it's funny though? Like, maybe your experience is different, but what I find funny is, despite knowing, like, from my experience, that I am not my thoughts and I'm not making them, that the sense of being, the sense of being a maker of thoughts is still there.
Yeah, I cannot also separate from that.
Yeah, you can't separate yourself from that.
That's next
that
level.
Perspective.
I think you can, but
I mean,
but yeah, just
like currently.
Me neither. I cannot do it. Like, because Sam Harris talks about the I dissolving, and your sense of self dissolves.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And then it's obvious. But yeah, that's the elephant in the room. It's pretty crazy. Because we all have this like Judeo-Christian, Greek thinking that is a nice heuristic, but it doesn't go the whole way of the fact of free will. And it is so obviously wrong.
Yeah. And this is it's funny. Like, I mean, I think Sam
You
Harris.
agree with me, man. I found a brother right there.
Yeah.
Because I swear every time I make this argument, people look at me like I lost my marbles.
Oh, I've upset 2 people talking about the lack of free will.
Oh yeah,
And
people that I know.
No.
Okay.
Actually, nobody in Berlin. But I was surprised. Like, I remember Sam Harris saying that he was surprised that it was such a inflammatory topic.
Yeah.
And I was super surprised when I was just mentioning it as this thing, like, holy, it kind of makes sense that, we don't have free will. And this girl was like, just got really emotional. She was like, I cannot live in a world like that. And she just could not buy it. It's funny.
For me, it's a better world. It's
Yeah.
weird, but it's like if we're picking ourselves or being rational, which of course we aren't, because to quote Haidt, the rational tail is wagging the emotional dog, and I think it's even more than that. I think rationality is some kind of, it's just like justice, like it's just like a meme we've created, but
that's interesting.
Yeah, but anyways, it's just that our entire society and our entire Weltanschauung, the way we see the world, everything is built on it. And for example, I read Robert Sapolsky's latest book about behavior, and it's called Behave, and it's amazing, and he goes through every level of behavior influence, be it like evolutionary or like at the gene level, societal. It's so interesting. And at the end of the book, he makes a case against the justice system as we know it.
I was wondering if we go there. Yeah,
man. And that's why, and I was a law student, and that's the conclusion at which I arrived.
Interesting. Wait, so his so the conclusion was that there's something we need to fix about
there is something, it's wrong in its core.
Yeah.
And it's like, we don't need to change the laws necessarily. We don't need to change the disposition, but we need to change the way we think about them.
Yeah.
Because there is this like Judeo-Christian idea of retribution, of punishment that has, and if you just get rid of that, it doesn't mean you shouldn't put people in prison to like protect society.
No, exactly.
But it doesn't mean you should, you cannot derive an ought from an is.
Yeah.
I was also quoting Hume, referring to Hume when we were talking about rationality, reason is and ought to be only the slave of the passions. I'm referencing him here because the reality doesn't dictate a way of acting about it. But I think definitely that we have to stop thinking about punishing people and making them suffer because they made other people suffer. Yeah.
I think to quote Sam Harris is like, hate doesn't make sense when you think about it that way.
Yeah.
Like, similarly, do you know Johann Hari?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like he's
talking about addiction.
Yeah, talking about addiction and like, and I think it's similar, like the way we treat people with addiction. I forget. My brain's starting to.
Yeah, we've been talking for a long time. Yeah.
But essentially, he was saying like, the way we treat people with addictions is we put them in prison or put them in rehab or something. We isolate them when really what we should be doing is taking care of them.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Seeing
them as victims of their own circumstances.
And I think maybe not the only thing, but a big thing that stops us from changing our policies for the better is this idea of retribution and exacting justice on somebody.
Yeah.
It's strange. We can't help it but want to punish people.
The wicked.
Yeah.
The one that's straight from the fray.
Yeah.
The little like black sheep.
Oh, the fray. I'm sorry.
Yeah. The one. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But I think it's very. I think it is very practical in some ways, because there is another elephant in the room. Maybe it's not as big as an elephant, but maybe it's a Asian elephant. Like it's not a mammoth, but it's like a pretty big elephant. I just lost my train of thought.
It's
There's an
starting to
elephant
have-
there, but it's about mental illness and psychological troubles, because this is very practical, because it allows us to frame psychological problems like depression on an individual level. So it's like, oh, you're bipolar, oh, you're borderline, you have a problem.
Mhm.
And the society at large that creates these conditions is never put back into question, even though we know that the numbers of depressions we've had and of suicides in many places have been going up like skyrocketing. And it's not
Mhm.
that people have like more problems, it's that it's just the society.
Yeah.
And so I think it's practical because we don't put back into question like our institutions and the way we relate to each other.
Yeah.
It's a cop out. Yeah, I don't want to go. I mean, I don't think there is a conspiracy behind it or anything. I think it's just like the way it is. And
No, yeah. I mean, I
but-
think it's the way we're used to it. We're kind of, it's a story we've been told, and it's hard to change habits.
yeah,
Maybe, you know. But yeah, I think things are changing. Like, people are catching on to the fact that there are some issues with this.
Yeah.
Like what you're talking about, criminal justice systems treating addiction or mental illness.
yeah,
But it's funny. Like, I have a feeling, I might be wrong, but I have a feeling that this this impulse to blame people
yes,
is kind of hardwired into us.
yeah.
I don't think it's a
It doesn't need
societal
to be
pressure.
true. It just needs to make sense in evolutionary speaking.
Yeah, exactly.
And forgiveness is not. I mean, except if it's conducive to selection, it's not. I agree with you.
Yeah.
It's a case where we have to transcend our limited nature. I mean, not transcend it, but find a way
Yeah.
to play around around the angles. And
Yeah.
I agree completely.
And I think it was also maybe a factor of it is like time pressure. Like
What
back
do you
in
mean?
like back in the day, like I think things like shaming and stuff or blaming somebody, I think they get you results in the short term, like very quickly. They give you what you want, like if you
Mhm.
want somebody to behave differently. And I think maybe it worked because back in the day our life expectancy was a lot shorter, and so you needed short-term solutions.
Yeah.
But now we don't need them.
Yeah, I mean, our whereabouts, the world we live in,
Yeah.
is changed, and it's permanently recontextualized. It
Mm.
brings to mind. I should find the sources for that. I'm gonna have a lot of homework to do. But there was an argument that went about the Japanese, the way that all the pronouns that you have, and the way politeness is. All the social codes that is related to the fact that it's a tiny island and that it's always been overcrowded. So it's a way to deal with promiscuity. So you can actually all live together without killing each other. I mean,
right.
only killing as little people as possible,
Right.
as few people. Yeah.
Yeah, we always find a way.
Yeah. No, of course you need to kill some of them, right? I mean, come on, it's not utopia. But I feel like we are at the dawn.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the internet has been unleashed upon us. It changes everything.
Yeah.
And now I feel like we are feeling the first waves. Only now.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think it's...
The fact that we're all connected like this. Like there is a tsunami coming like we've never seen.
Yeah, and it's one of these things. I mean, it's
It's pretty worrying, and it's also exhilarating.
exactly.
It's a very interesting time to be alive.
It does seem like this thing. It's amazing to have access to all this information. Now with YouTube, you can watch like long
Yeah.
interviews, conversations with people where you get so much more.
Even
out of
what we're
content.
talking about right now, I mean, for me, it was like harvested from the internet.
Yeah, I guess we're doing it now. Like
Yeah, we are.
podcast.
Feeding the machine.
Yeah, but one thing I feel like I think is a reality is that we just didn't know what it would do to people, the side effects,
No way to know.
and we just have to recognize those. But
Yeah. I mean, I just read a book by Niall Ferguson called The Square and the Tower.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a historian of networks, which is very, very interesting. I mean, could develop on that, but I just encourage everybody who's interested to check him out. Very interesting. And he was talking about these situations where we have like a game changer like this, a killer app, as you would put it.
Right.
And one of them was the printing press with Gutenberg.
Okay.
In Europe, because there was one in China 500 years earlier, like the printing press. But it changed the game because it allowed for production of books on an easier level. It was around, 1445, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then 50 years later, you have the 95 propositions by Mr. Luther.
Mm-hmm.
That he I forgot where it was, maybe Münster, I think, in Germany, and he just put it's the beginning of Protestantism and the religious wars of the 15th century. So it just unleashed it was just like a mess.
Yeah.
And that is maybe, his point was that of course you cannot do parallels like that and expect them to hold, but this was just like the squared version of the printing press.
Wow, yeah, I didn't know that. That's really interesting.
It's a metaphor, but it's not very a hopeful one.
Yeah.
And it's funny that we talk about dystopian stuff like at the end of this podcast as well, because that's what we were doing with Chris.
Oh, really? Same?
Yeah. Dystopian vibes, like we're all gonna die.
I've had many a conversation.
Kind of stuff.
Like
I wonder if it's my vibe, like it just lead people to the... And then this is good to be staring down the abyss with a friend. Yeah. It's better than...
I'm right there with you, man. I think about those things a lot too. Yeah. We didn't cover social media and stuff, but that's definitely something we could do.
Yeah, we touched on it with the internet and stuff.
Yeah.
But I think that's enough for today. We had a very, very long conversation.
And a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks a million for coming. I'll put all the relevant links below so you can access Gaby's music. Check him out. And I'll see you around, and I hope maybe to have you back. And then we can talk about, maybe we can do a post ex post facto. Maybe we don't have to wait that long, but after the wave, the tsunami of the internet has passed, and we'll be like, yeah. So we're 200 people on planet Earth right now.
Yeah.
Post-apocalyptic.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, maybe we'll be scribbling on tablets, clay tablets, because everything will have been destroyed.
Indeed, yeah, and posting them around.
Or just communicating with brain to brain. We'll see.
So many
with Neuralink, Okay. Well.
Thanks, Batu.
Bye. And that's all for now. Here it is. Hope you enjoyed that talk as much as I did. And now it's time for the footnotes. So there's a bunch of them. So I hope you're ready. I had a lot of fun researching them. Footnote number 1 is about the description of Tom Waits' voice by music critic Daniel Dirchholz. And he describes his voice as sounding like it was soaked in a vat of bourbon, left hanging in the smokehouse for a few months, and then taken outside and run over with a car. So I hope that makes you want to listen to his music. Footnote number 2 is about our common friend J.D. Eliot and his EP Gxldsmith, that I will have linked in the description. It sounds very organic, even though it's an electronic music EP. And as I was saying, it's very jazz influenced. You can hear it in the wonky grooves, in the chord progressions, and it also incorporates live percussions and synthesizers. So I recommend you check it out. Footnote number 3 is about a masterclass I was mentioning by Mr. Mick Gordon about Doom. It's a GDC video entitled Doom, Behind the Music, and I really recommend you watch it. It's really entertaining and interesting. Placere et docere. And you have the link in description. That's footnote number 4. I was also mentioning a podcast that Mick Gordon did on URM that I will also have linked, and it's really interesting. I was especially influenced by the part in which he talks about time boxing. So there you go. And 5th footnote is also about Mick Gordon and his song Herr, Faust. This song is absolutely... it's a soundtrack, but it's not for Doom, and I forgot to precise that it's for Wolfenstein. and it was co-written and co-produced with Fredrik Thordendal of Meshuggah, and that is the heaviest guitar sound I've ever heard. So you are warned. Just listen to it on speakers, turn the volume to 11, and you won't be disappointed. Footnote number 6 is about one of my favorite music theory YouTube channels, which is 8-Bit Music Theory. It's very entertaining, you learn a ton, and it's very aesthetically pleasing. I'm going to link you to one of his videos, the one of the ones about Breath of the Wild. So there you go. Footnote number 7, the Stravinsky quote. So the way I said it in the podcast was fairly confusing because it sounded like the Douglas Hofstadter quote was the Stravinsky quote. But the Stravinsky quote goes like this, and it's fairly similar. The idea is the same. The more constraints one imposes, the more one frees one's self, and the arbitrariness of the constraint serves only to obtain precision of execution. And it's from his book Poetics of Music in the Form of 6 Lessons. Footnote number 8. The quote that Gaby was looking for about limitations is a quote by Orson Welles, and it can be found in the 1992 edition of the Movie Business Book, and it goes like this: the enemy of art is the absence of limitations. So this idea seems to be some kind of a leitmotif. Footnote number 9, the Qatsi trilogy, Chronos, Baraka, and Samsara. So, the Qatsi trilogy is the informal name given to a series of non-narrative films produced by Godfrey Reggio and scored by Philip Glass. That is straight out of Wikipedia. And there are 3 movies. Koyanis Qatsi, Life Out of Balance, 1982. Powakatsi, Life in Transformation, 1988. And Naiko Qatsi, Life as a War, 2002. I think my favorite was the first one. And also to be noted is that the cinematographer Ron Frick, who worked on the Qatsi trilogy, also released 3 movies that are in the same vein. Chronos in 1985, Baraka in 1992, which is also a beautiful movie, and Samsara 2011. So number 10, Buffalo. I said Buffalo in the podcast, but I should have said buffalo. And the reason I chose this word is not totally innocent, because the phrase buffalo, 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 buffalo is a grammatically correct sentence in American English. So it was an example of cognitive saturation where the word starts sounding differently, sounding like something else. But it's also an example of how homonyms and homophones can be used to create complicated linguistics constructs in English through lexical ambiguity. And you also have the lion-eating poet, I think, is a famous Chinese poem along the same lines. 11, elf. The fancy German word I was referring to is Gxldsmith. So yeah, as I said, you can never go wrong with that. There's always a fancy German word for everything. Number 12, what I was mentioning about the Netflix series is that I was impressed. If you go on the Game of Thrones Reddit page, I mean not anymore because now the series is over and everybody's bitching about it. Or for example, Westworld. It's pretty incredible the amount of time some people dedicate to the elaboration of crazy theories that are often very, very interesting. The case of Westworld is interesting because actually they figured out what was going to happen and they changed one of the series. I read that on the internet. So it's very interesting, and in my opinion, it goes to show that we are just ready to interpret everything and be the detective, and it's really interesting and encouraging in my opinion. It shines a positive light on the human race, and it also it also blurs the limit between consumption and creation, because this is a way of a consumption related creation. That's also what it brings to mind. But in that case, I was just making the point that people are going to find meaning in things no matter what. Another example of that would be abstract art. Okay, so number 13. I said that I could probably understand Italian orally if it was spoken with a very French accent. And I did a little experiment, and it turns out that I was really overestimating myself, because I could not really understand anything. So I can understand interlingua, and we're probably going to talk about conlangs a little bit more in the future, because I'm really interested in them. And I can read some like Italian if it's not like literature or anything. But yeah, so just to make this clarification. Number 14, another clarification. When I was making a parallel between eating cheese and fruit or jam at the same time in a musical mix. So, for example, the fact that you would have a very high-pitched instrument or harmonics, and you would have a bass line or a kick, and they would be played at the same time, and you could hear them perfectly, and they wouldn't conflict. That was pretty clear when we were talking, and I feel like we lose a lot by recording, because I'm French, he's Italian, half Italian, so there is a lot that goes through the hands and the body language. Hopefully when we bring video to the podcast, that will be less of a problem. And also I have a track record for just assuming that people can read my thoughts and follow me. So yeah, I hope this clarifies it for some people. And stay tuned for the video. I really want to make this happen. Number 15. The way we greet each other in France and the kissing patterns. Well, this is even more complicated than I thought. So you have a website if you want to check it out with statistical, surveys in every département in France. So people vote on how many kisses do you need and what cheek you start with. For example, in Paris it's 2 and you start with the left. And I know that, for example, in the Bouches-du-Rhône, in the south, it's 2 as well, but you start with the right. So I was mentioning the problems that can cause. But it goes from 1 to 5, apparently. So if you're interested, you can check it out on the website www.combiendebis, Charlie, Oscar, Mike, Bravo, India, Echo, November, Delta, Echo, Bravo, India, Sierra, Echo, Sierra.com. Number 16, the face recognition ethnicity study, or rather studies, because I found 2. I found a meta-analysis, which is Elfenbein, H.A. and Ambidi, N. 2002, called On the Universality and Cultural Specificity of Emotion Recognition, a meta-analysis, published in the Psychological Bulletin, I guess. It's a concatenation of several studies about emotion recognition in facial expressions, and it goes to show that people can recognize and interpret the emotional facial expressions of a person of their own race faster and better than they can the ones of other races. And according to this meta-analysis, these findings apply to all races in the same way. The second study I wanted to tell you about is entitled Adults Scan Own and Other Race Faces Differently, and it goes to support the second point I was making, that you fixate on different parts of the face depending on the race, on the race that you are part of. It's a study that was published on PLOS ONE in 2012 by Fu, Hu, Wang, Quinn, and Lee. Footnote number 17 about deep learning. By the way, if you disagree or if you have some stuff to add to what I said about deep learning, I'm really not an expert in the subject, so you would be welcome to chime in and give me some more info. But from what I understand and from what I read on the internet, deep learning, which is also called deep structured learning or hierarchical learning, is part of machine learning and is based on artificial neural networks. What I didn't know is that it can be supervised, semi-supervised, or unsupervised, which I thought was the way it had to be. So yeah, that's a super interesting subject that I wish I would know more about. Footnote number 18 about Deep Blue and Kasparov. So actually I was wrong, because he played twice with Deep Blue, once in 96 and once in 97. And he won in 96 and he lost pretty closely in 97, and according to him and what he said on the portal, they refused to give him a rematch. Number 19. So Kasparov quoted Shannon's number, which is the numbers of legal moves you can have in a chess game, as being 10 to the power of 46. in the same podcast I was referring to. Although what I read on the internet is that the number of sensible chess games is around 10 to the power of 40, which makes a big difference. So yeah, there you have it. One source is Mr. Kasparov himself, and the other one is Wikipedia. Number 20. So I was making the point that in the 60s, we thought that voice recognition would be mastered over the next decade or so. And as it turns out, we are still struggling with it 50 years later. So what I was referring to, I thought I was referring to Marvin Minsky and something that he said, but I was referring to what Nick Bostrom said on the Sam Harris podcast when he was there. And he was not talking about voice recognition, but he was talking about facial recognition and machine perception and analysis. And so it's very interesting. I really recommend you listen to that podcast because he really shows that there is no way of knowing when we're going to have new information and be able to do new things, because we don't have access to the unknown unknowns. Footnote number 21 about the historical Gabriele Sforza. So he was born in 1423 and died in 1457, and he was a member of the Augustinian order, and he served as Archbishop of Milan between 1445 and 57. Footnote number 22. The names of the three artists that made Versailles look like it looks are Louis Levaux, who was the architect, André Lenôtre, who was the landscape designer, and Charles Lebrun, who was the interior decorator and the painter. Footnote number 23. I know it when I see it. It's a very famous phrase, and I trace the source. It was used by Supreme Court Justice Potter Stewart in 1964 in Jacobellis versus Ohio, and it's an attempt to describe a threshold for an obscenity test, which would waive First Amendment rights, and a pretty funny one at that. Number 24, the double feature of Totoro and Grave of the Fireflies. So the two movies were released in 1988. And they were not in a package together as in DVDs, but they were released in a double features in the theaters. So effectively, if you had a ticket to go see one, you could go see the other, which is an interesting choice. Footnote number 25, and the country in Kiki's delivery service. So it is much more complicated than I thought, because the city is called Corico, and it is designed to be unspecifically familiar. So it's very inspired by the part with the houses is inspired by Visby, which is a Swedish island, and the downtown part is inspired of by Stockholm. And you can see a bridge that looks almost exactly like the bridge of Regeringsgatan, but it also incorporates, according to Miyazaki, it also incorporates elements of Paris, Lisbon, and Napoli. And you can see some hills and cable cars that are reminiscent of San Francisco. Plus, at some point, Kiki looks at a map, and the names, the toponyms on the map are for Maui in Hawaii. So it's supposed to look familiar, but it's actually a big mishmash of very, very different places. 26, the Cronenberg movie with the Howard Shore soundtrack I was referring to is a 2005 movie called A History of Violence. Footnote number 27 about Nerdwriter and about Mr. Doug Adams. So I referred to his video called The Lord of the Rings, How the Music Elevates the Story, that I would encourage you to check out. And he makes a lot of points in there that are similar to the analysis that Doug Adams makes of Howard Shore's music in the book The Music of the Lord of the Rings Films, a comprehensive account of Howard Shore's scores. And I encourage you to check both out because they are extremely interesting. Footnote number 28, Kundalini. So in Hinduism, Kundalini is a form of divine energy called Shakti, and is believed to be located at the base of the spine. Quoting, okay, I'm going to try to say that right, Abhinavagupta, who's a Kashmiri mystic from the 10th century, Kundalini is the power that brings into manifestation the body, breath, and experiences of pleasure and pain with the power of sexuality as the source of reproduction. So Kundalini Yoga is based on these principles and is very influenced by Shaktism and Tantra. Number 29, Jack Dorsey. Jack Dorsey is the co-founder of Twitter, and I said Jake Dorsey, but it's Jack Dorsey. Footnote number 30, the Nobel Memorial Prize in Economics. So the official name of the prize is the Sveriges Riksbank Prize in Economic Sciences in memory of Alfred Nobel. And the first time I heard of the sleight of hand that happens there was in one of Nassim Taleb's books, which is more or less, in his opinion, a PR stunt. But there is more to it than that. The human rights lawyer Peter Nobel, who is part of the family of Alfred Nobel, he accuses the awarding institution of, I'm quoting there, of misusing his family's name, and he states that no member of the Nobel family has ever had the intention of establishing a prize in economics. He explains that Nobel despised people who cared more about profits than society's well-being, and he says that there is nothing to indicate that he would have wanted such a prize, and that the association with the Nobel Prizes is a PR coup by economists to improve their reputation. So there you go. That is even he's even more critical than I am about this prize. But that is not all, because in 1974, Friedrich Hayek, who actually won the Nobel Prize in Economics, said at the Nobel Prize banquet that if he had been consulted on the establishment of such a prize, he would have, quote, decidedly advised against it. Primarily because, quote, the Nobel Prize confers on an individual an authority which in economics no man ought to possess. This does not matter in the natural sciences. Here the influences exercised by an individual is chiefly an influence on his fellow experts, and they will soon cut him down to size if he exceeds his competence. But the influence of the economists that mainly matters is an influence over laymen, like politicians, journalists, civil servants, and the public generally. So that is why Friedrich Hayek, who got the prize himself, was against it. In his opinion, it was a dangerous thing. And indeed, he was right, because there have been many controversies over different recipients of that pseudo-nobel prize. Number 31, elephants. Elephants are the largest living terrestrial animals. African bush elephants are the largest species. Males can reach 3 meters 40 at the shoulder, and they can weigh almost 7 tons, whereas Asian elephants can reach 2.9 meters high, and they can reach around 4.6 tons. You also have, and the smallest species of elephants are African forest elephants, which can be up to 2.3 meters high and weigh 2.3 tons. But I think that we can agree that no matter the species, an elephant is a big thing to have in a room. Footnote number 32 about promiscuity and politeness in the Japanese language. So, I could not find any source for that. I know I heard it somewhere, so I'm crowdsourcing it. If you heard anything about that, I know there are some very interesting arguments out there about the way environment shapes languages when it comes to redundancy, grammar, and the theory of information. But in that specific case, I could not find anything. So if you know anything about it, please hit me up. And the last footnote number 33, some dates and some more info about Protestantism. So the printing press, which led to the printing revolution, was perfected in 1440. And the 95 theses from Luther were written in 1517, as he was a professor of moral theology at the University of Wittenberg in Germany. It's a critique of several things, including the selling of indulgences that reduce your time in purgatory. And it also brings back the doctrine of sola fide in the West, and argues that everyone should be able to read the Bible for themselves, which was a very controversial idea at the time. He sent a letter with his thesis on the 31st of October 1517 to Albert of Brandenburg, who was the Archbishop of Mainz, and now that's the Reformation days. And the hope was that every Christian would read the Bible and see the light, etc., and that we would all end up living in a utopia. But unfortunately, that's not what happened, and that's how the wars of religion in Western Europe started and lasted for a long time. And the parallel that Niall Ferguson, in his book The Square and the Tower, draws is one with the internet. So some people, like John Perry Barlow in his Declaration of Independence of Cyberspace, seem to have this idea that the internet is going to create world peace and a society in which we can all talk and discuss respectfully in a friendly manner. And he says, I quote, "Governments of the industrial world, you weary giants of flesh and steel, I come from cyberspace, the new home of mind. On behalf of the future, I ask you of the past to leave us alone. You are not welcome among us. You have no sovereignty where we gather." And according to Mr. Ferguson, that is pretty naive. And there is only one way to know where this is going to lead to. For the moment, we have some pretty unencouraging signs like growing echo chambers or the spreading of fake news like wildfire. But there is only one way to know, and we'll see where that goes. Okay, that's it for the footnotes. I wanted to take a second to thank all my friends that are sending me feedback about that podcast so I can make it better, and also messages of encouragement. I really appreciate it. It's really amazing, and I hope I can really turn that in something interesting. So time will tell. But I thought I would read, just for the fun of it, a short text, which is an extract of a speech given by President Theodore Roosevelt that he gave at the Sorbonne in Paris in 1910. And it's pretty famous. It's called The Man in the Arena. I just want to say as a disclaimer that I don't have any strong feelings about Mr. Roosevelt one way or the other. I just like this little text and I can relate to it. So there we go. The Man in the Arena. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. But who does actually strive to do the deeds? Who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions? Who spends himself in a worthy cause? Who, at the best, knows in the end the triumph of high achievement? And who, at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. Thank you for your attention. That was Baptiste for the Cross-Pollination Podcast. Please support if you learned something. You know what to do. Like it, sub, share, send me some chocolate. And that's all for now.